Chapter 41, The Duel and Challenges. Reminiscent of Durmstrang, John suddenly realized why Zuo had been so determined to approach the dragon. He truly possessed a unique skill. After their encounter, John also discovered their location, Scandinavia, not far from Durmstrang's school. "Edgar, can you guide us out of here?" John inquired. Heinrich, observing John, had a soft expression on his face, reminiscent of Malfoy with his pale cheeks. To John's surprise, Heinrich complimented him. "You are very strong." Thank you," John replied modestly, though Heinrich's intentions seemed deeper as he fixed his gaze on John. Removing a glove from his right hand, Heinrich threw it at John's feet, issuing a challenge. "I challenge you to a duel." "A duel?" John was taken aback, and Fleur, indignant, exclaimed, "We saved you." "I am aware. You possess the abilities of a dragon whisperer, akin to Merlin himself," Heinrich stated, each word heavy with meaning. "Defeat me, and I shall reveal the path back." Fleur leaned in, whispering to John, "He seems fixated on you." Though John couldn't shake off the feeling that Fleur's words carried a hint of schadenfreude, her smile suggested she had settled some personal score. Nonetheless, she had faith in John's abilities, having witnessed his prowess against the fire dragon. Understanding the peril of being targeted by Edgar, who was known for his extreme measures, John realized refusal wasn't an option. Accepting the duel was the only way to ensure their swift return. He reminisced about Professor Flitwick, the champion duelist and diminutive professor, as he and Heinrich positioned themselves back-to-back, wands at the ready. They paced apart, counting to 10 before launching simultaneous attacks. John's agility gave him the upper hand, his spellcasting swift and powerful. Heinrich, however, was quick to defend with an iron armor curse, countering immediately. Their exchange was intense, resembling a duel between seasoned fencers rather than students, their wands flashing like sabers. John narrowly avoided a curse, retaliating with his most potent spell. Heinrich matched his attack, and their spells collided, erupting into a fiery blaze. John's superior level 4 fire curse enveloped Heinrich, but at the last moment he reduced his spell's power, sparing Heinrich from severe harm. "You are defeated," John declared, ceasing his attack, his posture relaxed yet dignified. Heinrich, acknowledging his defeat with grace, stood and collected his wand. "Indeed, you possess great strength. I concede." With the duel concluded, Heinrich offered guidance to Durmstrang, where a flu network could facilitate their return. John, wary of Durmstrang's reputation for hostility towards Muggleborns, pondered the risks but decided to proceed, trusting Heinrich's word. Led by Heinrich, John and Fleur navigated their way out of the treacherous valley, contrasting John's earlier misadventure. Upon exiting, they were met by a carriage, its arrival orchestrated for Heinrich. "Master Heinrich, who might these two be?" inquired the white-haired butler, eyeing John and Fleur with suspicion. "There's no need for concern, Rick," Heinrich dismissed, sparing them further interrogation. The butler, named Rick, reluctantly held his tongue. John was intrigued by the presence of a human butler instead of a house elf, noting the rarity among pure-blood wizard families who typically favored the cost-effective labor of house elves. As they journeyed towards Durmstrang, the challenges they faced seemed to echo the trials of the famed school, blending the lines between legend and reality. In the Malfoy residence, after boarding the carriage, it set off towards Durmstrang. Throughout the journey, John couldn't shake off the feeling that Heinrich's gaze was constantly fixed on him. No matter how subtly John shifted his position, Heinrich's piercing eyes seemed to follow every move. "Fleur, what's he staring at?" John inquired, trying to mask his discomfort. Fleur, barely containing her laughter, replied, "Edgar, deputy of the strong man." John's head spun with confusion. So Edgar wasn't relying on him after all. What sort of strong man was he dealing with? Sighing, John lamented the loss of his holiday to continuous schooling. Instead of a relaxing game, he found himself thrown into the Valley of Never Rest, fleeing from a fire dragon. It felt like his first-year holidays were squandered. Upon arrival, Durmstrang Castle loomed before them. It lacked the grandeur of Beauxbatons and the rich heritage of Hogwarts, presenting itself as a modest 4-story structure amidst a breathtaking expanse of land. Behind the castle lay a mountain lake where some students indulged in a refreshing swim, a secret haven protected by enchantments. Fleur harbored no fondness for Heinrich, whose rudeness overshadowed his handsome features. Inside the school, they encountered a similar sentiment among the Durmstrang students, who displayed open disdain and avoidance towards Heinrich, treating the visitors with equal disregard. This shared experience slightly softened Fleur's aversion towards him. Approaching a fireplace, Heinrich directed, "John, you can reach the corner hat square through here." Grateful for the guidance, John responded warmly, "Thank you, Heinrich. You must visit Hogwarts sometime. I'll ensure you have a great time." The prospect of returning home lifted John's spirits. Heinrich's enthusiastic nod and hoarse affirmation, "I will go," seemed overly eager, leaving John puzzled but hopeful for a future meeting. After a handshake and farewell, John and Fleur stepped into the fireplace, disappearing in a burst of green flames. Navigating from Durmstrang to Corner Hat Square in search of a portkey proved challenging, but John and Fleur eventually made their way back to Beauxbatons. The ordeal, though exhausting, brought them closer. In the days that followed, John devoted himself to alchemy, with Fleur occasionally bringing him biscuits that seemed to have a magical touch, lifting his spirits. Emerging from the alchemy room one day, John stretched, feeling the toll of his endeavors. "At this rate, I'll break before the sword is forged," he joked to himself, planning to recuperate with sleep after a morning run. Returning to his dormitory, he discovered a letter from Dumbledore. "Dear John, I hope you're enjoying your holiday. Apologies for the intrusion, but I have a small favor to ask of you." Intrigued, John noted the request to visit Rue Montmorency, marking his next destination. After resting, John used the Floo network to travel to Paris. Rue Montmorency, one of the city's oldest streets, held an air of mystery. As he walked, an unsettling feeling of being watched crept over him. Utilizing the reflection from a window, John spotted a man trailing him, seemingly underestimating the young wizard. With a smirk, John quickened his pace, leading the follower towards a secluded corner. The man, caught off guard by John's sudden disappearance, rounded the corner, only to find the man had vanished from sight, but before he could comprehend what was happening, a spell struck him squarely in the chest. Stupefy. The incantation echoed through the air just moments before the impact. John, having lifted the disillusionment charm, now stood revealed in the dim light, his gaze fixed on the man now slumped unconscious on the ground. With a swift motion and a focused expression, he cast the levitation charm, causing the man's body to rise gently off the ground. John then proceeded to drag him away with the spell, maneuvering through the shadows with a purposeful stride. The night air was thick with tension, the only sounds being the soft rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. John's actions were precise, his determination clear in the set of his jaw and the sharpness of his movements. He knew the importance of what he was doing, the weight of the responsibility he carried. This was not just about the man he had just subdued. It was about something much larger, a plan that required careful and discreet execution. As he moved through the darkness, John couldn't help but feel the gravity of the situation. He was aware of the risks, the potential consequences of his actions. Yet, there was a resolve in him, a resolve that had been forged in the fires of adversity and honed by the challenges he had faced. This was a moment that called for courage, for the kind of bravery that comes not from the absence of fear, but from the determination to act despite it. The night would hold many more challenges, of that John was certain. But for now, he focused on the task at hand, the first step in a journey that would test him in ways he could scarcely imagine. Chapter 42: Death Eaters and Teachers. John subdued the man in the corner, swiftly confiscating his wand before discarding it carelessly into the shadows. With the threat neutralized, he proceeded towards Montmorency Street, his curiosity piqued by the surroundings. Amidst his exploration, a particular house, ensconced within a lush garden and exuding an aura of ancient history, captured his attention. Despite its apparent invisibility to passers-by, John felt drawn to it and decided to investigate further. He knocked on the door, receiving no response initially. Just as he contemplated a stealthier approach, the door creaked open. Greeting him was a frail, trembling old man, his hair a silvery cascade reflecting his advanced years. The man's eyes widened in surprise upon seeing John. "You finally arrived. Please, come in for some tea. "I believe the tea leaves are in the cabinet," he said, his voice trailing off as if lost in thought. The old man's demeanor suggested a struggle with memory, a common plight of the elderly. John stepped inside, immediately noticing the array of silver utensils scattered across the table, their designs reminiscent of tweezers and chopsticks. As he settled in, a teapot on the counter animated itself, its lid popping open as tea leaves and water combined within it. The teapot, seemingly alive, brewed the tea through a series of shakes, a clear demonstration of alchemy at work. The old man busied himself searching for something among the piles of books that adorned the room. He meticulously packed them into a handbag, which, despite its ordinary appearance, seemed to defy the laws of space. John recognized the use of an undetectable extension charm, a clever spell for such purposes. Apologizing for the delay, the old man finally approached John, extending a fragile hand in greeting. John, cautious not to apply too much pressure, was nevertheless surprised when the old man winced in pain. "It's okay," the old man reassured him, noticing John's concern. "Hi, John Wick. My name is Nicholas Flamel." Nicholas Flamel, the very name John had pondered over countless times, now stood before him, a shadow of his former self. "I had intended to mentor you personally, but unforeseen events this year have delayed me. However, my diary has informed me of your exceptional talent," Flamel explained, handing John a tote bag filled with books. These were not ordinary books. They contained Flamel's notes and insights, a legacy of his quest for immortality. John, piecing together the clues, ventured, "Is this about the Philosopher's Stone?" He understood the gravity of the situation. Nicholas Flamel was preparing for the end of his life. The destruction of the Philosopher's Stone, as announced by Dumbledore, signaled the cessation of Flamel's immortality. Flamel nodded, a serene smile on his face. Everyone must face death eventually. Had it not been for your arrival, the Philosopher's Stone would have been destroyed in June. He acknowledged his impending death, the last of his elixir only sufficient for the year. The legendary alchemist, who had lived for over 6 centuries, was ready to conclude his extraordinary journey. John felt a pang of disappointment, having hoped for more time with Flamel. Yet it was clear that Flamel saw in John a worthy successor, someone to whom he could pass on his knowledge and legacy. Through Dumbledore's introduction and the insights gained from the diary, Flamel had chosen John as the most suitable candidate for his inheritance, a decision that would shape John's path in ways he had yet to fully comprehend. John had finally found a teacher capable of instructing him in the art of alchemy, but he hadn't anticipated that their meeting would also signify a parting. This was once the home of Nicholas Flamel, who was believed to have lived in Devonshire until his demise. As John accepted the handbag from Flamel, its weight seemed to grow heavier with the significance of their encounter. "Teacher, who was that person we met outside today?" John inquired, recalling the stranger they had encountered. Nicholas Flamel offered a smile upon being addressed as teacher. Despite their brief acquaintance, there was an immediate bond between them, reminiscent of a long-standing mentor-student relationship. That was a Death Eater. Even with Voldemort defeated, his followers continue to lurk, awaiting his return, Flamel explained, his expression turning grave at the mention of Voldemort's name. Having lived through 2 reigns of the Dark Lord, Flamel was acutely aware of Voldemort's obsessive quest for immortality. 12 years after Voldemort's downfall, his minions still sought Flamel, hoping to use him in their efforts to resurrect their master. Temporarily separated from his wife, Flamel had returned to his old residence to teach John, who stayed with him for the remainder of the vacation. John absorbed the teachings on alchemy with an insatiable hunger. Flamel's wisdom extended beyond alchemy. He was also a master of runes, spells, and magical creatures. Day by day, John soaked up knowledge like a sponge, leaving Flamel immensely satisfied with his pupil. Alchemy demanded not only talent, but also a relentless pursuit of knowledge, qualities John possessed in abundance. Flamel saw in John a reflection of his own passion for alchemy and an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. Despite the destruction of the Philosopher's Stone in John's possession, being in the company of the only person capable of creating it made the loss seem inconsequential. As their time together drew to a close, Flamel acknowledged John's exceptional talent. "John, "You are the most gifted student I have ever encountered," he said, preparing to spend his final days with his wife. Teaching John had filled him with a deep sense of fulfillment and pride. The journey of alchemy is endless. The Philosopher's Stone is not the culmination of your path, but merely the beginning. Flamel had imparted the knowledge of creating the Philosopher's Stone to John, setting him on a path to become a new giant in the field of alchemy. When it was time to part ways, John embraced his teacher, his actions gentle and tinged with reluctance. Flamel, however, faced his impending death with acceptance, viewing it as a well-earned rest after a long life of service. With Flamel's departure, John's time in France came to an end. He visited Beauxbatons to bid farewell to Fleur, one of his few friends there. "Fleur, we'll meet again. Perhaps not at Beauxbatons, but at Hogwarts," John said with a hopeful grin, recalling a competition that involved several schools, including Beauxbatons. He handed Fleur a badge, and she responded, "Don't forget to write to me. And make sure your owl gets some exercise. It's getting a bit chubby." Basil, John's owl, found himself unjustly criticized. After their goodbyes, John encountered the drunk man who had sold him a faulty portal. In retaliation for being swindled out of 3 galleons, John left the man hanging from a statue, his wand discarded in a foul ditch. "That's for cheating me," John declared, ensuring the man would remember the lesson for days to come. Chapter 43. The Dursleys and the Unexpected Visitor. John Wick returned home after a month-long absence, greeted warmly by his brother Watson. Watson, despite his youthful appearance, had a mature understanding of the household's dynamics, particularly the importance of their mother's mood. John's heart sank upon hearing that his mother, Mrs. Wick, was displeased with him for not keeping his promise to write weekly. His recent stay at Nicholas Flamel's, where a Fidelius charm prevented any communication from reaching him, had inadvertently caused this rift. Mrs. Wick, usually a paragon of patience and kindness, was visibly upset, a rare occurrence that John dreaded. The memory of surviving on poorly made bread and dipping sauces during a previous Cold War with her was enough to send shivers down his spine. Determined to make amends, John approached her with a carefully chosen peace offering, a bottle of exquisite French perfume. His attempt at charming his way back into her good graces was successful, though not without a stern reprimand for his negligence. After smoothing things over with his mother, John retreated to his room, where Watson delivered a stack of letters from his friends. Among them were letters from Hermione, Ron, Hagrid, and surprisingly, 3 from Draco Malfoy. Each letter, except Malfoy's, expressed concern over Harry Potter's silence throughout the holidays, fueling John's worry that Harry might have been apprehended by the Ministry of Magic for using magic outside school. Resolved to check on Harry, John prepared to leave, securing a freshly baked apple pie from Mrs. Wick as a peace offering. He arrived at 4 Privet Drive and was greeted by Dudley Dursley, who mistakenly hoped the pie signaled a belated apology from Harry. Dudley's loud recognition of John caught the attention of Petunia Dursley, who remembered him from King's Cross Station. Vernon Dursley, Harry's uncle, also emerged, his presence adding to the tension. John's visit was unexpected and unwelcome, stirring a mix of curiosity and apprehension among the Dursleys. His intention was clear, to ensure Harry's well-being and possibly mend fences, but the Dursleys' reaction was anything but predictable. Vernon Dursley emerged, likely in his 40s, with a notable absence of a neck, a substantial beard, and a physique that spoke to a life of comfort. Upon laying eyes on John, Vernon's face contorted with displeasure as he bellowed, "You dare to set foot in my home!" His confidence stemmed from a recent incident where Harry received a warning from the Ministry of Magic for using magic outside school, leading Vernon to believe these young wizards were powerless against him. He attempted to shoo John away with his words. "Mr. Dursley, it appears there's been a misunderstanding," John replied, his tone dripping with politeness. "I am here as the child of the household at number 6 Privet Drive, merely a neighbor coming to visit." This momentarily took Vernon aback, and John seized the opportunity to add, "Would Mr. Dursley really lack the basic decency to turn away a neighbor who has come bearing gifts?" Upon closer inspection, Vernon noticed the apple pie in John's hands, its rich, sweet aroma causing his son Dudley to salivate uncontrollably. Vernon's expression shifted through various shades of displeasure before he grudgingly allowed, "If you're not part of that troublesome lot, then come in." John entered, offering a slight smile as he handed the apple pie to a stern-faced Petunia before stepping inside. "Sit down, but know you'll be leaving in a minute," Vernon said, barely concealing his disdain. John observed Dudley eagerly devouring the apple pie, noting the striking resemblance between father and son. "Where's Harry?" he inquired. "Harry? Don't even mention that boy to me," Vernon spat out, revealing that he had confined Harry to his room, secured with iron bars, and only allowed him meals through a small opening. He was adamant that Harry would not be returning to school, a decision he believed was final. As Vernon glanced at his watch, preparing to dismiss John, his demeanor shifted from hostile to aggressive. However, John, losing his patience, forcefully corrected Vernon's misunderstanding by snapping his finger, causing Vernon to howl in pain. "Mr. Dursley, you seem to be under a significant misapprehension," John stated, his voice now icy. "Misunderstanding? There's no misunderstanding. Leave now, or I'll call the police," Vernon threatened through gritted teeth. John's patience had evaporated. "I'm not merely Harry's classmate. My father has connections with Mr. Fern Wallace. You do understand what that means, don't you?" The mention of Fern Wallace, a notorious gang leader in London, caused Vernon's bravado to crumble, realizing the gravity of John's threat. "Please, forgive my earlier rudeness," Vernon pleaded, the pain evident in his voice as he forced a smile. "Harry is upstairs," he conceded. "Thank you, Mr. Dursley. Now, if you'd be so kind as to let me see my friend," John replied, releasing Vernon's finger. Vernon, nursing his possibly broken finger, stepped aside. John, maintaining his composure, suggested to Dudley, still preoccupied with his pie, "Perhaps you should show some hospitality and lead the way." Reluctantly, and only after Vernon physically coerced him, Dudley led John upstairs. Standing before Harry's sealed room, John mused aloud about the UK's child protection laws, to which Dudley quickly interjected, blaming Harry for a recent mishap with his father's business, eager to distance himself from any blame. The scene painted a vivid picture of the Dursleys' household dynamics, revealing the lengths to which they would go to control Harry, and the unexpected leverage John wielded through his connections, altering the power balance within the Dursley home. John's lips curled into a smirk. He realized he hadn't brought a pencil with him. Taking a step forward, he addressed Dudley. "Open the door, Dudley." Chapter 44, The House Elf and the Sky Car. Harry had never experienced such a dismal birthday. His day was utterly spoiled by Dobby, the house elf, resulting in him being confined to his room. He even harbored fears that he might never return to Hogwarts again. Peering through the narrow gap in the window's iron plate, Harry's gaze fell upon Hedwig, who had visibly lost weight due to the poor quality of food over the past several days. Hedwig, looking rather ill, turned her head away in a huff. At that moment, the door, which only opened twice daily, swung open. Harry's eyes widened as he saw John stepping inside. "John!" Harry exclaimed, a mix of surprise and relief in his voice. John's brow furrowed as he surveyed the cramped space. The room was dimly lit, with scant sunlight filtering through the shuttered windows. He approached Harry, saying, "I came to check on you after Hermione and the others mentioned you hadn't replied to their messages." Sitting down on Harry's bed, John looked at him quizzically. "Why on earth are you locked up?" Harry's frustration bubbled to the surface as he recounted the incident. "A house elf broke in, warned me against returning to Hogwarts, and caused a mess. Uncle Vernon discovered the chaos and blamed me, citing the rule against using magic outside school." Finding a sympathetic ear, Harry poured out his grievances to John. John, however, was puzzled by the mention of a house elf causing trouble for Harry. "A house elf targeting you?" he mused, knowing it was unusual for house elves to attack wizards or cause havoc in their homes. Could someone have put him up to this? Harry immediately thought of Malfoy as a potential instigator. John, however, dismissed the idea, reasoning that if Malfoy were behind it, he'd likely have boasted about it in a letter by now. The conversation then turned to the possibility that the house elf had acted on its own, which seemed even more baffling. John knew that only old and wealthy wizarding families had house elves, and while the Potter family certainly fit that description, Dobby's disobedience didn't make sense since house elves couldn't defy their master's orders. As they delved deeper into the mystery, Harry, with hope in his eyes, asked, "John, did you come to rescue me?" He had heard Uncle Vernon's screams earlier, which he assumed were related to John's arrival. John shook his head, explaining that while he hadn't come to rescue Harry himself, Ron was planning a rescue operation after learning that Harry had received a warning letter from the Ministry of Magic and hadn't responded. "I'm here more for moral support," John clarified, adding that he couldn't very well engage in anything illegal like kidnapping the Dursleys. Despite John's inability to rescue him, Harry felt comforted by their conversation. They talked about John's recent trip abroad, which made Harry quite envious. Before leaving, John issued a serious warning. "Harry, be vigilant. I believe Voldemort may be plotting his return. I encountered a Death Eater in France, which suggests his followers are still active. Perhaps Dobby's warning wasn't entirely unfounded." Their discussion left Harry with much to ponder, especially about the potential dangers that lay ahead and the mysterious motivations of the house elf named Dobby. John's visit to Harry at the Dursleys was marked by a clear sense of purpose. He reminded Harry of the crucial clue hidden in a secret chamber within a bathroom, urging him to remain vigilant. "I know, John. I'm glad you came to see me. If only I had my luggage, I could review it," Harry responded, acknowledging the need to prepare. Unfortunately, his belongings were still downstairs. John reassured him not to worry. After bidding Harry farewell and descending the stairs, he addressed Uncle Vernon with a calm authority. "Even if you confine Harry, he should be allowed time to organize his belongings." Vernon, intimidated by John's presence and fearing the potential wrath of the wizarding world, even though John couldn't legally use magic outside O.F. school, hastily agreed, "I'll move his things up right now." It was clear Vernon wanted to appease John, whom he viewed as a formidable figure, to avoid any trouble. Harry was puzzled by how John managed to make Uncle Vernon so compliant. He wondered why, if John could influence Vernon to this extent, he didn't just secure his release from the Dursleys' house. Unbeknownst to Harry, John had already left, casting a final glance at the Dursleys who watched him depart, acknowledging their begrudging hospitality towards Harry, a wizard, in their Muggle household. That night, John was alerted to the sound of a car engine. From his attic window, he observed a turquoise car flying past, heading towards the Dursleys. Recognizing the three red-haired occupants as members of the Weasley family, John mused on the ingenious melding of Muggle technology and magic that resulted in the flying car. He deduced that Arthur Weasley, head of the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office, was likely the creator, not the Weasley twins, given the advanced level of enchantment involved. John watched as the Weasleys helped Harry escape with his luggage, thanks to John's earlier intervention. The next morning, Vernon Dursley was distraught over the damage to his house, suspecting John's involvement in some vindictive scheme. This incident led to Dudley being confined to the house, much to his chagrin. Meanwhile, John was engaged in correspondence with Ben Abbott, a renowned swordsmith, commissioning a sword. He provided mithril and special wood for its creation, anticipating its completion in 2 weeks. Upon receiving the second-year textbook list from Hogwarts, John was puzzled by the inclusion of titles that seemed more like novels than academic texts, such as Walking with Corpse Eaters and Holidays with Witches. Recalling Hermione's recommendation of these books for their fascinating content, John humorously wondered if Hermione possessed the gift of prophecy, given her enthusiasm for these unconventional resources. After some contemplation, John decided to temporarily set aside his current project. He dedicated himself to setting up an additional alchemy room in the basement. During this period, he crafted several items, pondering the possibility of selling them in the future. Despite his family being of middle-class status, the exorbitant costs associated with alchemy were becoming unsustainable. John recognized the need for self-sufficiency and the potential benefits of finding a business partner. This partner would not only assist in the production, but also handle the sales of the items. However, John was adamant that this individual must possess a high level of professionalism. The magical items he was creating were far from mere novelty items like those produced by the Weasley twins. They were potent artifacts with significant power. After giving it some thought, John realized he didn't know anyone with the necessary expertise in his immediate circle. The logical next step seemed to be a trip to Diagon Alley, where he hoped to find someone with the professional background and interest in collaborating on his alchemy projects. Chapter 45: Nocturne Alley and the Thief. Good morning, Kick. As John reached down to pick up the cat that was rubbing against his feet, he couldn't help but feel content with Fluffy's company. Kick, the cat, meowed in response, and 3 more cats scampered out to gather around John's feet. He then took out the canned cat food he had brought along. Tom, his dog, wagged his tail in dissatisfaction, circling around John. He had been promised a walk, yet here they were, feeding cats instead. An elderly lady, leaning on a cane, was making her way slowly towards them. John looked up and greeted her warmly. "Mrs. Fig, good morning." Arabella Fig, with a smile that lit up her face upon seeing John, was no ordinary old lady. Unknown to many, she was a member of the Order of the Phoenix, a squib under Dumbledore's request to keep an eye on Harry. 6 months ago, Dumbledore had added another name to Mrs. Fig's watch list: John Wick. Dumbledore had personally visited to get to know the student. Mrs. Fig had taken a liking to John, especially because of his fondness for cats, a trait that reminded her of Dumbledore's love for sweets. This fondness had convinced Dumbledore to entrust John with the temporary guardianship of the Philosopher's Stone, a fact John was unaware of. After giving each of the kittens some attention, John joked, "It's better to be a cat outside. It won't suddenly turn into an older cat girl." Once he had satisfied his affection for the cats, he was about to leave when he sensed someone watching him. Spying on me? His first thought was the Death Eaters, but he quickly dismissed it. The Death Eater he had encountered previously was after Nicholas Flamel, not him. He wasn't Harry Potter, the savior, and held no value for the Death Eaters to monitor. Shrugging off the feeling, John continued as usual. After bidding Mrs. Fig goodbye, he took Tom for their jog. Gone? Once he left Privet Drive, the sensation of being watched vanished. This puzzled John, and the feeling returned the next day during his morning run. This time, John caught a glimpse of the observer, a person wrapped up as if suffering from a skin disease. The mysterious figure did not follow once John jogged out of Privet Drive. Could they be spying on Harry? John pondered, considering Harry had already left. The thought seemed unlikely. On the 3rd day, while running, John accidentally dropped something from his pocket. The item sparkled in the sunlight, catching the eye of the mysterious figure, who suddenly showed a glint of greed. Rushing over, the figure picked up the dropped item, a gold galleon, and smiled. Good luck never fails. With the galleon safely tucked away, the figure no longer pursued John. That night, under the cover of a disillusionment spell, John stepped out with a piece of parchment in hand. This wasn't the Marauder's map, but a simpler navigation tool with an arrow that changed direction as John moved. He followed the arrow until it led him to a modest house, empty except for a fireplace connected to the Floo network and a tent set up inside. Let me guess, head to Diagon Alley, John mused, grabbing a handful of Floo powder and calling out the destination. A green fire enveloped him, and in the next moment, he emerged in a shop within Diagon Alley. Dusting off the chimney ash from his nose, he reapplied the disillusionment spell and ventured out into the night. Diagon Alley was quiet at night, with only a few cloaked figures moving about, some engaging in what appeared to be illicit transactions. Nocturne Alley? John realized where he had ended up before he knew it. In the shadowy confines of Nocturne Alley, nestled just a stone's throw away from the bustling Diagon Alley, the air was thick with the scent of clandestine dealings. Here, Mungus Fletcher, a figure shrouded in a cloak, found himself embroiled in a heated exchange with a shopkeeper. Your greed knows no bounds. Do you have any idea of the effort it took to procure this? Mundungus protested, his voice laced with frustration. The shopkeeper, unimpressed, retorted with a sneer. Effort? This is nothing more than a simple looking-glass. Mundungus, the quality of your stolen goods has been on a steady decline. Defeated and seething, Mundungus stormed out of the Lebo Jinbok antique shop, his plans of robbery thwarted by his own reluctance to escalate the confrontation. As he wandered the streets, Mundungus's thoughts turned to the leaky cauldron. a place where he could drown his sorrows and perhaps find an unsuspecting mark to swindle. What a wretched day. Dumbledore has me tailing this kid, leaving me no time for my own ventures. Forget Harry Potter. Why should I bother with this kid? He grumbled to himself, lamenting the missed opportunities to enrich himself. His scheming was abruptly interrupted when he felt the cold press of a wand against his lower back. A voice, menacing and low, warned, "Don't move unless you fancy a hole in your stomach." Trembling with fear, Mundungus offered up his few remaining galleons in a bid to appease his assailant. Before he could attempt any magical escape, his wand was expertly confiscated, leaving him utterly defenseless. John, the mysterious figure behind the wand, led Mundungus into a secluded corner. "It seems you're not as honest as you claim," John observed, his voice dripping with skepticism. Mundungus, trying to mask his fear with bravado, insisted on his innocence. John, however, was not easily fooled. It was then that John revealed his awareness of Dumbledore's directive, surmising that it was likely a protective measure in light of his past encounters with Death Eaters in France. John, now the custodian of Nicolas Flamel's vast knowledge and experimental manuscripts, understood the potential dangers that lurked. Yet, realizing Mundungus was not a threat, John saw an opportunity to exploit. As Mundungus braced himself for the worst, John proposed an unexpected offer. "Do you want to make some money, Mundungus Fletcher?" he asked, presenting a chance for Mundungus to engage in a lucrative venture. Confused but intrigued, Mundungus agreed, sensing that refusal was not an option. John outlined his plan. Mundungus was to assist in selling several magical artifacts, creations of John's own foray into the darker aspects of magic, unsuitable for the likes of Diagon Alley, but perfect for the clientele of Nocturne Alley. "All you need to do is agree, and we'll split the profits," John stated, his wand still pressing ominously against Mundungus. Eager to escape his precarious situation, Mundungus nodded fervently, his eyes lighting up at the prospect of easy gold. John, satisfied with the agreement, showcased the dangerous artifacts, setting a 3-day deadline for Mundungus to deliver the profits. With the wand finally removed from his back, Mundungus collected his wand from the ground, his gaze fixed on the artifacts before him, a glint of greed flickering in his eyes. The fear that had momentarily gripped Mundungus Fletcher vanished as he admired the object in his hands. "This is such a rare find. Old Borgin will definitely take an interest in it," he mused, glancing around before carefully stowing the item away. Unbeknownst to him, his actions were being closely observed by John, who had chosen not to leave the scene just yet. Instead, John watched as Mundungus made his way back to Borgin and Burke's, the notorious antique shop. When Mundungus emerged, his pockets were noticeably heavier with a substantial amount of galleons. After a moment of contemplation, Mundungus decided to split his earnings, perhaps thinking he could conceal a portion for himself. However, the instant this thought crossed his mind, he experienced a sharp, tingling pain in his waist, a sensation that filled him with dread. In a panic, he quickly relinquished the money, taking out only a fraction of the total amount. It was then that John's voice broke the silence. "As I mentioned, you're entitled to a percentage of the earnings. If you wish to continue our arrangement, use this to contact me." With that, John tossed a piece of parchment towards Mundungus, who, after a brief hesitation, picked it up. Mundungus stood frozen in place for a long while, not daring to make a move until he was certain John had departed. It was only then that he allowed himself a sigh of relief, grateful for the unexpected turn of events that had spared him. As he looked down at the galleons, his share of the loot, which ironically exceeded what he would have made through theft alone, he found himself lost in thought, pondering the peculiar and risky partnership he had unwittingly entered into. Chapter 46. The Arrival of the Sword and Preparations. 2 weeks had passed when John received a package from the United States. The package, a lengthy wooden box, was securely wrapped. Eager to see its contents, John grabbed a crowbar and pried open the box. After removing 6 nails, he lifted the lid to reveal a bed of hay cushioning a knight's sword, its blade gleaming as if it were a mirror. The semicircular handguard, a blend of mithril and steel powder, was crafted using a casting method. The oak hilt felt sturdy in his grasp, and the pommel, fashioned from mithril, featured a circular gap, a design choice made to facilitate enchantments. This sword, constructed with a three-piece method, boasted a straight and durable blade, resistant to breaking. John, unable to resist, began to swing the sword, marveling at its balance. The center of gravity was perfectly positioned, allowing for smooth, effortless swings. It could be wielded with either one hand or both, a versatility that John had specifically requested to mimic the characteristics of a greatsword. After a few practice swings, he sighed, wishing he were at Hogwarts to test it on the training grounds. The gap in the mithril is perfect for enchanting, John mused, setting the sword down to begin the enchantment process. He meticulously carved runes into the mithril handguard, each stroke of the carving knife deliberate. The enchantment he chose was a flame spell, symbolized by the rune Fehu, representing the ox and signifying both harvest and untamed fire. With his wand, he completed the enchantment, and the sword transformed. Runes ignited with a red glow, and the blade burst into flames, becoming a fiery weapon. Holding the flaming sword, John couldn't help but feel like a witch hunter. With a set of Viking armor, I could very well pass for one, he thought, amused by the idea. He extinguished the flame and placed the sword into a small bag, which, despite its feminine appearance, served its purpose well. Let's name it Iron Wick's sword, he decided, giving birth to a weapon that felt uniquely his. After storing the sword, John turned his attention to a letter he had received, planning his next day. Hermione had invited him to Diagon Alley to purchase books for the semester. Her handwriting, dotted with ink spots from pressing too hard, conveyed her excitement. John wondered what made tomorrow so special, especially since Harry and Ron were also planning to visit. The trio, always in sync, seemed to have a knack for unintentional coordination. Responding to Hermione's letter, John then wrote to Hagrid, requesting assistance in acquiring materials for magical creatures. He also penned a letter to Mundungus Fletcher, employing a different handwriting to mask his identity. Mundungus, despite his greed, had proven to be an effective middleman for selling John's magical creations. Claiming they were the work of a master alchemist, Mundungus had significantly boosted sales, thereby increasing John's wealth. Though not as affluent as Harry, John had amassed a considerable fortune, which he found all too easy to spend. Hagrid's response arrived promptly, providing an estimate for the requested materials. The total cost took John aback. 1,200 galleons for alchemy materials, he exclaimed, realizing the expense of his endeavors. Yet, undeterred by the cost, John prepared for his trip to Diagon Alley, eager to gather what he needed for his next project. The cost of magical materials was indeed steep. John couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy towards Hagrid, for whom the Forbidden Forest was a veritable treasure trove. Hagrid had offered him the lowest prices, yet even with those, a significant portion of John's savings was at risk of being depleted. Some items Hagrid had chosen not to include, thinking them unnecessary for John, which was a small mercy. Otherwise, the majority of John's funds would have been consumed by these purchases. I'll need to withdraw money from Gringotts tomorrow and pick up some books while I'm at it, John thought, the financial strain of his alchemical pursuits weighing heavily on his mind. Despite the costs, the potential earnings from alchemy kept him motivated. When John informed his parents of his impending trip to London, his father, Watson, was all too eager to open the family safe, planning to exchange some money at Gringotts for a few odd purchases. John, however, quickly intervened, knowing all too well the goblin's cunning ways. He laid a handful of galleons on the table, stopping his father in his tracks. Other kids might need money for school, but I'm going to school to make money, John said, his eyes twinkling with a mix of humor and pride. Watson's initial excitement turned to resignation as he realized his son was not only setting boundaries, but also offering a better exchange rate than the goblins. The next day, the family made their way to the leaky cauldron, which, to their relief, was less odorous than before, likely due to Professor Quirrell's absence. John navigated through Diagon Alley with a clear plan: deposit the bulk of his money in Gringotts, keeping only what was necessary for his immediate needs. The goblins, though not the most pleasant creatures, managed a secure bank, and John couldn't help but admire their efficiency, even as he sneakily collected some of the water from the burglar waterfall, curious about its properties. Upon leaving Gringotts, John encountered Draco Malfoy and his father, Lucius, heading towards Nocturne Alley. Curious, and with his own reasons for visiting the darker part of the magical world, John discreetly followed them under the cover of a disillusionment charm. Draco's incessant chatter about Harry Potter seemed to wear on Lucius's patience, a fact that John found amusing. John's path eventually diverged from the Malfoys, leading him to Mundungus Fletcher's residence. Mundungus, who had been living comfortably off his dubious activities, now sported a more respectable appearance. "God, I look like a businessman now," he mused, admiring his reflection. His self-satisfaction was abruptly cut short when he noticed his door ajar. Wand at the ready, Mundungus prepared to confront the intruder, his heart racing with anticipation. "Who's there? Show yourself!" Mundungus Fletcher called out, his voice trembling slightly as he brandished his wand into the dimly lit alleyway. "Mundungus, you dare to point your wand at me?" came a deep, hoarse voice, chilling Mundungus to the bone. He quickly lowered his wand, clasping his hands together in a gesture of submission. "Your Excellency, Johnny, I meant no offense. I thought you were a thief lurking in the shadows." "Ha!" was the only response from Johnny Silverhand, a name that John had adopted in his dealings with Mundungus. He never revealed his true identity, always shrouded in mystery. Finding a seat, he settled down with an air of authority, surveying the surroundings. "So, this is the shop you've acquired. It must have cost you a pretty penny." "No, Mr. Johnny, you misunderstand," Mundungus hurried to explain, feeling unjustly accused. "I assure you, securing this location for 500 galleons was a steal. It wasn't easy, but the location is prime." He was earnest in his defense. For once, he hadn't deceived John. "Indeed, I suggest you refurbish this place promptly, Mundungus. Engaging in legitimate business can be far more rewarding than your usual petty thievery," John advised, his tone firm, yet not unkind. He had encouraged Mundungus to purchase the shop, envisioning the establishment of a Silverhand Johnny store. It was part of a broader plan to steer Mundungus away from his life of crime. Mundungus, who had grown accustomed to a more stable and less clandestine lifestyle, was eager not to jeopardize this newfound stability. "I'll see to it immediately," he promised, eager to please and await further instructions. However, as was typical of Johnny Silverhand, there was no further guidance. Mundungus was left waiting, but John had already vanished, as silently and mysteriously as he had appeared. Johnny Silverhand was no end for many things, but his abrupt departures without a word were his signature, leaving those in his wake always guessing. Chapter 47. Adults and Children. Mundungus Fletcher was busy decorating his shop, feeling optimistic that after working under the tutelage of Lord Johnny with the Silver Hand, he might one day rival the esteemed Bogenbach antique store. John, ensuring that Mundungus refrained from any discourteous remarks, didn't leave the premises until he was satisfied. Stepping out, John made his way towards Diagon Alley, only to notice the Malfoy father and son duo emerging from Borgin and Burke's, apparently having sold something. Just as John was about to continue on his way, a familiar figure caught his eye exiting Bogenbach. "Harry?" John was taken aback, puzzled as to why Harry was in Nocturne Alley. Harry, who had inadvertently wandered into Nocturne Alley, was visibly shaken. The sight of shrunken human heads for sale in a shop across from Borgin and Burke's, along with a large cage filled with menacing black spiders, had unnerved him. As Harry hurried along the alley, trying to adjust his glasses that had slipped down his nose, he attracted the unwanted attention of the local wizards. John observed from a distance as a wizard began to stealthily approach Harry. An old witch, revealing her decayed, mossy teeth in a grotesque grin, grabbed Harry's hand. "You're not lost, are you, dear?" she croaked, her other hand ominously holding a plate of what appeared to be dead man's nails. Harry, his heart racing with fear, slowly backed away from the witch's chilling presence. "I'm fine, thank you. I just want to leave," Harry stammered, trying to resist the witch's advance. John intervened just as the old witch became more aggressive, attempting to share the gruesome contents of her plate with Harry. "Harry, what are you doing here?" John's sudden appearance startled the witch. As she turned to face the handsome newcomer, her sinister smile faded when John's expression darkened. With a swift movement, John's left hand conjured a whip-like shadow, striking the witch's plate from her grasp. The old witch screamed, ready to retaliate, but halted when she found John's wand aimed directly at her eyes. "Go away, or I will make you blind," John warned coldly, sending a shiver down the witch's spine. At that moment, a towering figure emerged from the crowd. "Harry, John, what are you doing here?" Hagrid's booming voice filled the alley as he approached, immediately recognizing the old witch and scolding her. "Go away, you shameless thing." He quickly pulled Harry away, leading them out of Nocturne Alley, with the witch not daring to follow, cowed by John's threat. Once outside, the familiar white marble of Gringotts greeted them. Hagrid ushered the two into Diagon Alley, helping Harry clean the soot from his clothes. Upon learning that Harry had gotten lost, Hagrid could only chide him for his carelessness. "John, why were you there?" Hagrid asked, surprised to find John in Nocturne Alley as well. John, preferring not to mention his business dealings, simply smiled and replied, "I was checking for any interesting alchemy materials." "That's too risky. You just need to tell me," Hagrid complained, revealing that he too had been in the area to procure materials for John, as well as to buy a potion to eliminate flesh-eating slugs. He shuddered at the thought of what might have happened to Harry had John not been there to intervene. "Thank you, John. You saved me again." Harry expressed his gratitude sincerely. John shrugged it off, claiming he was merely passing by. Harry then excitedly shared that he was staying at the Weasleys, describing it as fantastic. Remembering that he had been separated from Ron, Harry grew anxious to reunite with him. "Harry, why didn't you write back to me?" Hagrid inquired, concerned. Harry apologized, explaining the ordeal with the Dursleys that had prevented him from responding. An enraged Hagrid vowed to teach the Dursleys a lesson for their treatment of Harry. As they continued their walk, Hermione's voice called out from the steps of Gringotts. "Harry! Harry, come here!" She hurried down to greet them, her presence bringing a sense of normalcy and safety after their unsettling encounter in Nocturne Alley. Hermione's brown, shaggy hair flew behind her as she approached with a wide grin, her prominent teeth on full display. "What's the matter with your glasses, John? Oh, you're here too, Harry! And Hagrid, it's wonderful to see you again," she exclaimed, her joy unmistakable after just stepping out of Gringotts. "Have you been to Gringotts yet?" she inquired. "I'll head there as soon as I find the Weasleys," Harry replied, recounting his unintended detour to Nocturne Alley, from which he had no means of escape. Hagrid, towering above the crowd, spotted the Weasleys navigating through the bustling street. "Harry, we were worried you'd lost your way," Mr. Weasley said, catching his breath. His red hair, a trait common among the Weasleys, was thinning, and his tall, slender frame was adorned with glasses. "Molly's been frantic. She'll be here any moment. And this must be, John Wick, of course." Ron, upon noticing John, immediately wondered about Harry's whereabouts. Hagrid, with a stern expression, informed them he ended up in Nocturne Alley. "That sounds amazing," the Weasley twins exclaimed in unison, their envy evident as their family strictly forbade visits to Nocturne Alley. It was far from amazing. If John hadn't been there, Harry could have been in serious trouble, Hagrid remarked, still upset about the encounter with the old witch. This revelation only fueled the twins' curiosity further, urging Harry to share his adventurous tale. "Harry, oh dear, I'm so relieved you're safe," Mrs. Weasley said as she arrived, panting. She immediately began fussing over Harry, brushing off his clothes with a coat brush she pulled from her bag. Mr. Weasley, meanwhile, took John's glasses and expertly repaired them with a flick of his wand. Ginny, the youngest daughter, joined her mother in tending to Harry, eager to show her gratitude. "I must be off. I'll see you all at Hogwarts," Hagrid announced, eager to escape Molly's overwhelming concern. "Oh, John, thank you so much. You're a true friend," Molly said, her fondness for John growing upon learning of his timely assistance. Even Ginny approached to express her thanks, though John modestly claimed it was mere coincidence. However, Molly's warmth soon made John feel as if he were one of her own, a sentiment that overwhelmed him slightly. "Ahem, I've already visited Gringotts. I'll wait for you outside," John said, hastily excusing himself as the group prepared to enter the bank. After a short wait, John observed Mr. Weasley and Hermione's father exiting Gringotts, arms around each other in camaraderie. They agreed to reconvene at Lyhan Bookstore in an hour, giving Molly time to take Ginny clothes shopping. As the four friends strolled along the winding, cobbled streets of Diagon Alley, Ron expressed his envy of John's travels. "John, have you been abroad? That's so enviable." "Where did you visit in France? Paris?" Hermione inquired, recalling John's mention of the trip in a letter, but lacking specifics. After a moment's thought, John replied, "Yes, I visited Paris. There, I encountered a drunkard selling door keys in a hideout. He sold me a faulty key, and I ended up being chased by a fire dragon." "Ha, John, you're hilarious." Ron laughed heartily, assuming John was jesting. Harry and Hermione also found amusement in John's tale, appreciating his sense of humor, though John felt a bit helpless, knowing his story was indeed true. Upon reaching Lion Bookstore an hour later, they found it bustling with people and adorned with huge banners featuring Gilderoy Lockhart. "Gilderoy Lockhart? That name sounds familiar," Harry mused. Hermione's excitement was palpable. "We'll get to see him in person. Nearly all the books on our list are his work," she said, beaming. John, overwhelmed by the sight of the long queue, spotted Draco Malfoy. The crowd dispersed the group, and John, using his stature to his advantage, made his way to the second floor. Observing Malfoy's clenched teeth as Harry took pictures with Lockhart, John couldn't help but comment, "Really, you're envious of this?" Malfoy, startled by John's presence, nearly lost his balance, but was steadied by John's quick reflexes. "Look at Harry Potter, acting as if he's above everyone else," Malfoy sneered. He was extremely displeased with the attention Harry was receiving, unaware that Harry himself felt as though he were walking amongst the living as a ghost. Chapter 48. The hospital and Neville John couldn't help but notice the jealous look directed at him, but he simply shrugged it off, deciding to prioritize purchasing his books. However, his shopping was interrupted when he stumbled upon Mr. Weasley and Mr. Malfoy embroiled in a heated altercation. The Weasley twins were cheering on the sidelines, clearly entertained by the spectacle. They might have even joined in, if not for the fact that Mr. Malfoy was clearly outmatched by the larger Weasley family presence. "What's going on here?" John mused, observing Mr. Malfoy's expression darken as Mr. Weasley snatched a copy of Toadstools from his grasp. Hagrid soon intervened, pulling the two apart as Mr. Malfoy spat out some bitter words and spitefully tossed a book into Ginny's cauldron. "They're being surprisingly restrained, considering they're not using magic," John noted. It was clear to him that both men were wary of attracting the Ministry of Magic's attention. After all, a physical altercation was one thing, but using magic in such a dispute was an entirely different matter. "My goodness, is there a fight happening?" Watson exclaimed, suddenly remembering his son's intention to buy books. Upon arriving, he found the area in disarray, with Mrs. Wick anxiously searching for her son amidst the chaos. John watched as Mr. Weasley received a scolding from Molly, much like a child being reprimanded. Having completed his own shopping, John bid farewell to Harry and the others. As he did so, he noticed an old book, resembling a diary, in Ginny's cauldron. He assumed it was just another second-hand book the Weasley family was accustomed to using and thought little of it. Since John's family were Muggles, he couldn't use the Flu network to return home. Instead, they spent another day in London before heading back. Once home, John eagerly delved into the materials he had acquired, including those sent by Hagrid in the following days. "These are brilliantly written," John remarked, closing a book by Gilderoy Lockhart. The stories were captivating, with hidden magical principles that intrigued John. Could it be that this defense against the dark arts professor is actually competent? He wondered, considering Lockhart's rich experiences might make him an excellent teacher. Feeling a sense of anticipation, John set aside the book and began working with dragon tooth powder. This substance, slightly poisonous, was mixed with other ingredients to create a viscous liquid. He applied it to Ironwick's sword, which turned black and then mirrored after the application was evenly spread. Coating it with dragon teeth should imbue it with a demon-repelling effect, though its actual efficacy remains to be seen, John mused. He had enhanced Ironwick's sword to combat magic, ensuring it could inflict damage on magical creatures. After inspecting the blade's sharpness and durability, John stored the sword away. His attention was then drawn to a pile of letters from various alchemists and rune experts. These correspondences were the result of his diligent efforts over the vacation, seeking advice and building connections within the wizarding world. Nicholas Flamel had advised him on the importance of networking, reminding John that progress often required collaboration. Thanks to his status as a Hogwarts student, many experts, proud alumni themselves, were more than willing to assist. Among the letters was one from Dharma Alex Belby, expressing interest in John's suggestions for improving the wolfsbane potion. Where there's a will, there's a way, John thought, recalling the potion's potential to allow werewolves to retain their sanity during transformations. Moved by compassion for those afflicted, John had shared his insights, hoping to make a difference. John was taken aback by the unexpected invitation from Dharma Alex Belby, who expressed a desire to meet him in person at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. Considering the opportunity to broaden his connections, John agreed to the meeting. Setting aside the letter of invitation, he opened the last piece of mail, which brought a wave of sadness over him. The Lemays, his cherished mentors, had passed away. They had chosen not to inform John of their passing, wishing him to remember them in life rather than in death. The news deeply saddened John, especially since their departure was marked by a modest commemoration, witnessed only by their friend, Dumbledore. Upon arriving at St. Mungo's, not located in the bustling Diagon Alley, but hidden within a nondescript red brick department store in London named Tau Tau Limited, John found himself stepping into a world of magical healing. He explained his visit to a mannequin in the storefront window, which served as a unique entrance to the hospital. Inside, on the second floor, he encountered a scene of distress. A wizard suffering from a werewolf bite, with Dharma Alex Belby, a thin man, meticulously recording the patient's reactions to the injury. Belby explained that while silver couldn't heal werewolf bites, a concoction known as Baishian provided essential nutrients to help patients endure the initial pain. When Belby noticed John, his initial impatience turned to surprise upon learning John's identity. He had expected a seventh-year student, not someone who appeared much younger. Despite John's youthful appearance, Belby recognized his talent and invited him to visit his manor, an invitation John gladly accepted. After their meeting, John encountered Neville Longbottom wandering the hospital corridors. Neville's presence puzzled John, who quickly learned that Neville was there to visit his parents, former Aurors left mentally incapacitated by Death Eater torture. The sight of Neville's parents, unable to recognize their own son, deeply moved John, who offered his friend comfort in the face of such tragedy. The encounter underscored the heinous acts committed by Voldemort and his followers. Leaving the hospital, John bid farewell to Neville and his stern-looking grandmother, who waited outside for her grandson. The visit to St. Mungo's had been eventful, but John's thoughts soon turned to the wolfsbane potion, a remedy for werewolf bites he remembered from his third year at Hogwarts, still unreleased to the public. Recalling its key ingredient, aconitum, John pondered the potion's complexity and the risks involved in its use, given the plant's potent toxicity. Several days after sending his theory to Dharma Alex Belby via letter, John eagerly awaited a response. Finally, a reply arrived, succinct yet promising: success. Inside the grand Belby Manor, reminiscent of the Roman Colosseum, a large, solid iron cage stood at its center, bathed in moonlight that fought its way through the dark clouds. It was the night of the full moon, and the man trapped within the cage writhed in agony, his body undergoing a painful transformation as his hair grew at an alarming rate. Observe these pitiful creatures, trapped between the forms of wolf and man, Dharma Alex Belby remarked, his voice laced with a mix of disdain and fascination. He held a luxurious cane while an enchanted pen beside him diligently recorded his observations. The entire transformation process takes but half a minute, and you are about to witness a moment that will undoubtedly earn its place in history. The excitement in Alex's voice was palpable. The development of the wolfsbane potion represented a monumental breakthrough. As a master potioneer, Alex had long since moved beyond the pursuit of wealth. His sights were set on fame and recognition. Success with the wolfsbane potion could earn him at least a second-level medal, a testament to his brilliance and a milestone in his scholarly pursuits. John, standing as the first witness to this clinical experiment, understood the significance of the moment. Alex had elevated John to a position of trust and respect, recognizing his contributions to the project. The use of the highly toxic Kamejasma aconitum in the potion's formula is nothing short of genius, Alex continued, unable to hide his pride. Many potion masters have avoided this ingredient due to its lethal properties, but the key lies in mastering the correct dosage. Their journey to this point had not been without its failures. Previous experiments had resulted in 2 werewolves becoming paralyzed and 3 others left in vegetative states. Finding the delicate balance required was akin to capturing the elusive golden snitch. It was John who had pinpointed the crucial dosage, his keen senses and understanding of magical properties guiding them away from potential disaster. As the half-minute mark passed, the 2 observers watched intently. The man, who had been bitten by a werewolf a year prior, completed his transformation. Initially disoriented, the werewolf's eyes soon cleared, showing none of the wild fury typical of his kind. He nodded in response to Alex's query, managing to utter a single word, yes, despite the difficulty. The wolfsbane potion was a success. Alex couldn't contain his excitement, while John, though pleased, knew further confirmation was necessary. "Your Excellency Dharma Alex Belby, please open the cage," John requested, his tone firm. "What?" Alex was taken aback, disbelief etched on his face. "Are you jesting? Even with the wolfsbane potion, we cannot afford to trust these creatures." His words were steeped in prejudice, reflecting the widespread discrimination faced by werewolves in the wizarding world. Despite being victims of their condition, they were ostracized and feared. "We cannot claim success until we've conclusively proven that werewolves can retain their sanity," John argued, undeterred. Reluctantly, Alex acceded to John's request, his cane striking the ground to fling open the cage door. The werewolf stepped out, and Alex, wand at the ready, shouted, "Go back, you beast!" John, however, moved closer to the werewolf, his posture calm and his hand near his wand, ready for any eventuality. He stood before the transformed man, now towering and fearsome in appearance, and said softly, "Shelby, show me that you truly are in control." Alex protested vehemently, "This is madness. You're risking your life." Embracing a werewolf was a notion that even Shelby found astonishing upon hearing it. With a cautious approach, he finally embraced John, treating him with the gentleness one might afford a delicate piece of art, much to Damo Alex's shock. "I must admit, werewolf fur is somewhat coarse," John quipped, secretly breathing a sigh of relief. His reluctance to sacrifice everything for science was overshadowed by his curiosity to test whether werewolves could indeed retain their sanity. The stigma against werewolves among wizards stemmed from their uncontrollable violence post-transformation. If this could be managed, werewolves could essentially become a formidable force, akin to animagi equipped with both armor and strength. Observing Dharma Alex's astonishment, John couldn't help but chuckle. "Dharma Alex will be etched into the annals of magical history. We've transformed a race." This prospect of glory was what Dharma Alex cherished most, prompting him to burst into laughter. John's acknowledgement of Shelby's bravery was not lost on him. "Shelby, perhaps we can forge a friendship. Thank you for your commitment to the wolfsbane potion." "It's my honor," Shelby responded, his voice tinged with gratitude. Having faced discrimination and isolation since his affliction, he had resigned himself to being a test subject. Though not fully cured, maintaining his sanity was a significant victory. He was particularly thankful to John, who, unlike Dharma Alex, did not view him with pity or disdain, but treated him with genuine respect and equality. Throughout the year, Shelby had grown accustomed to the cold stares and isolation. Yet, a simple act of kindness, like John's embrace during his transformation, was profoundly moving. As the night progressed, Shelby remained in control, a testament to the wolfsbane potion's success. In the aftermath, Dharma Alex's eccentric celebration contrasted with John's offer of employment to Shelby. "Are you interested in a job? 100 galleons a month?" John proposed, seeing in Shelby not just a guard for his nocturne alley shop, but a person of integrity and resilience. Shelby, once an auror, now reduced to a shadow of his former self due to his condition, was taken aback by the offer. Despite the pay being less than what he earned as an auror, it was a generous offer for a werewolf. He respected John, not just as a boss, but as someone who saw beyond his affliction. "John Wick," John introduced himself, "but in the shop, call me Johnny Silverhands, and keep an eye on the thief we've got there." "Tommy Shelby," he replied, a smile breaking through his somber demeanor. "I believe that's within my skill set." Their partnership marked the beginning of a fruitful collaboration, not just between them, but also with Dharma Alex, who, despite his initial desire for sole recognition, acknowledged John's indispensable contribution. John, however, humbly declined sole credit, suggesting that shared success could still be legendary. Alex Dharma was deeply moved by the offer of a first-class medal. Who could resist such an honor? His gaze fixed on John, eager to learn the terms of this enticing proposal. "I seek exclusive rights to the Wolfsbane potion," John began, his voice steady with determination. "In return, I'm prepared to offer you a significant share of the profits." However, Alex Dharma declined the offer. Wealth held little allure for him. His fortune was vast enough to last several lifetimes without depletion. "There's no need for profit sharing," he responded, a hint of generosity in his tone. "You're already familiar with the Wolfsbane potion's formula. I'll grant you full access to it." John was overjoyed by this unexpected turn of events. A master of potions with exclusive rights to such a valuable concoction was bound to amass wealth, albeit gradually. Yet what truly astounded him was Alex Dharma's indifference to financial gain, a trait that John couldn't help but admire. Ultimately, the two reached a consensus. John secured the exclusive rights to the Wolfsbane potion, while Alex Dharma achieved the prestigious recognition he sought for his research and development efforts. With John's involvement, the potion's efficacy was significantly enhanced, transforming it into a veritable blessing for werewolves everywhere. This collaboration not only marked a milestone in potion making, but also forged a unique bond between the two men, united by their contributions to a cause greater than themselves. Chapter 50. Dobby and Hitting the South Wall. A formidable bodyguard was dispatched to Johnny Silverhand's establishment in Nocturne Alley. Mundungus Fletcher, unaware of the airborne Tommy Shelby's true identity, could only infer from his deferential demeanor towards Johnny that he must be someone of significance. This realization was a sobering one for Mundungus, who had begun to feel overly self-important. He had thought himself indispensable, but now it seemed he was merely one of Lord Johnny's pawns, and for some reason, the presence of Shelby instilled in him a sense of dread. It was akin to the unease of being spotted by an auror during a theft. With such a vigilant observer, Mundungus knew he had to be on his best behavior. As a newcomer, Tommy Shelby's compensation was generous, a monthly salary of 100 galleons, plus a regular supply of Wolfsbane potion from John. During his year of wandering, Shelby had encountered many werewolves. John planned for Shelby to recruit other werewolves to their cause once the shop expanded. Given Shelby's background as a former auror, John was confident in his character. Despite having opened just a few days ago, Silverhand Johnny's store was not bustling with customers, but it still managed a daily revenue of 200 galleons. John was optimistic that as the store gained more recognition, business would flourish, especially once the Bodhidharma Alex first-class medal was awarded and the reputation of his Wolfsbane potion spread, attracting more werewolves. The store offered 3 tiers of Wolfsbane potion, the basic version for 30 galleons, which suppressed bloodlust, the superior elixir for 80 galleons, allowing recognition of loved ones and the ability to remain stationary, and the top-tier potion for 150 galleons, which preserved the user's appearance, magical abilities, and consciousness during transformation. These potions not only addressed the immediate needs of werewolves, but also aimed to alleviate the discrimination they faced. The top-tier potion, in particular, was the most labor-intensive to produce, but offered the greatest benefits. Shelby, recognizing the value of John's offer, was fiercely loyal to him. As the start of the school year approached, Harry's stay at the Burrow left John feeling somewhat isolated. Despite his wealth, John found that money was always in short supply, given the high costs of alchemy. However, his endeavors were fruitful. He successfully inscribed a second rune into Ironwick's sword, creating a magic circuit that allowed the sword to wield magic independently of John's own magical reserves. While the magic from these circuits needed time to recharge and was primarily useful in emergencies, It was a significant achievement. John spent his days practicing magic, particularly focusing on transfiguration, which he felt was in need of improvement. He longed to master the dragon form, a feat he believed would only be possible at a higher level of proficiency. Perhaps I should delve deeper into transfiguration texts, he mused, acknowledging his ambition. Suddenly, John sensed an intrusion. The basement, equipped with magical detection devices, alerted him to the presence of an uninvited guest. Aiming his wand at a shadowy corner, he declared, "Did you think you could hide from me?" From the darkness emerged a creature with large green eyes and drooping bat-like ears. With a swift spell, John transformed a desk into strips of cloth, binding the intruder tightly. A house elf? He realized, taken aback. "Dobby has come to see John Wick, Harry Potter's friend," the house elf squeaked, struggling against the restraints. The cloth strips constricted around Dobby, muffling his cries. "Dobby? The house elf?" John recalled Harry's grievances and addressed the elf, his tone a mix of curiosity and caution. A deep voice resonated through the room. "Who sent you here? Are you trying to learn of Harry's whereabouts through me?" No, Dobby wants John Wick to protect Harry Potter," Dobby hastily explained, immediately realizing he was on the verge of speaking ill of his master. Wanting to punish himself, but restrained by the cloth strips, Dobby had no choice but to repeatedly hit the wall with the back of his head, chastising himself. "Bad Dobby! Bad Dobby! Stop!" John, feeling a headache coming on from the chaos, reluctantly used the cloth strips to further secure Dobby's head to prevent him from harming himself. Keeping his wand at the ready, John approached Dobby with a serious expression and inquired, "You mentioned Harry would be in danger. How do you know this?" Seeing Dobby's face contorted with fear, unable to self-harm due to the restraints, John sighed, realizing the house elf's tendency for dramatics. He decided to rephrase his question for clarity. "What kind of danger are you referring to?" "A conspiracy, a dangerous and terrifying conspiracy. The most horrifying event will unfold at Hogwarts," Dobby exclaimed, his voice filled with panic. John, sensing the urgency in Dobby's words, released the spell, causing Dobby to collapse to the ground. "And why have you sought me out to protect Harry?" John asked, lowering his wand and fixing his gaze on the house elf who had intruded into his home. Dobby, sniffling, responded, "Dobby has heard tales of John Wick, a powerful wizard who has protected Harry Potter before." John couldn't help but let out a wry chuckle. "I'll admit I've taken steps to protect Harry, but calling me a powerful wizard might be stretching it." He glanced at Dobby, feeling a mix of amusement and helplessness. "I'm hardly more than a novice with modest magical ability, but if you truly wish to protect Harry, you must provide me with the name of the mastermind behind this conspiracy. With that information, I can alert Dumbledore. Given Harry's significance as the savior, with the White Devil around, I doubt anyone could harm him." "Dobby can't say, bad Dobby, bad Dobby." Dobby began to attempt self-harm once more, prompting John to restrain him again. Although skeptical of Dobby's claims, John resolved to investigate the matter further if it indeed posed a real threat to Harry. "I will look into this conspiracy to verify its authenticity," he assured Dobby, who expressed his gratitude. John then noticed Dobby's pitiful state, dressed in an old pillowcase, and offered, "I have some old clothes you can wear if you don't mind." Dobby's reaction was one of sheer astonishment. "Dobby is so grateful to John Wick. You are as revered as Harry Potter himself. House elves are only freed when their masters present them with clothes." Despite his gratitude, Dobby couldn't accept John's offer, elevating him to a status akin to Harry's, albeit slightly lower in his eyes. With a snap of his fingers, Dobby vanished. Capable of casting spells without a wand, John mused, realizing his home's protective measures were insufficient. He decided to enhance his security to prevent future intrusions. As time marched on and Johnny Silverhand's store found its footing, it was time for John to return to school. On September 1st, Watson accompanied his son to King's Cross Station, humorously attempting to pass through the barrier to Platform 9 and 3/4 himself, only to collide with the solid wall. Nursing a sizable bump on his head, Watson couldn't help but wonder if Hogwarts had simply forgotten to send him a letter in his youth. Meanwhile, Mrs. Wick was busy entertaining guests in her beauty shop, leaving John to witness his father's futile attempt with a mix of amusement and exasperation. "Okay, Dad, it's time for me to go," John said, as Watson, looking dejected from his failed attempt, watched his son depart. Suddenly, a loud crash followed by two surprised yelps echoed through the station. Watson turned to see two young wizards, Harry and Ron, staring bewildered at the now sealed barrier. "Why can't we pass through?" Harry asked, puzzled. "I don't know, but we're going to miss the train," Ron replied, equally confused and anxious as they faced the closed passage, unable to proceed. The realization that they couldn't take the train to Hogwarts had left Harry and Ron in a bind. However, Ron quickly lit up with a solution. "We can drive to Hogwarts," he exclaimed, recalling his family's enchanted flying car. Harry harbored some reservations about the plan, fearing the repercussions of arriving late, or worse, facing expulsion from Hogwarts. Yet, the prospect of not reaching Hogwarts at all seemed far more daunting. With a mix of excitement and apprehension, they approached the Weasley family's flying car. Just as they were about to embark on their unconventional journey, a voice interrupted their preparations. "Hey, I think you guys could use some help." Turning around, Harry and Ron were met with the sight of a man donning a hat, his presence unexpected and his demeanor confident. The man introduced himself with a smile that seemed to know no bounds. "The name's Watson Wake, but you can call me the God of Canary Wharf," he declared, his nickname hanging in the air with an air of mystery. Harry and Ron exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of what to make of this self-proclaimed deity of Canary Wharf. Yet, with the clock ticking and their options limited, they couldn't help but wonder if this unexpected encounter might just be the stroke of luck they needed to get to Hogwarts on time. Chapter 51. The Canary Wharf Riders and the New Term. The Hogwarts Express chugged along the tracks, its steam whistle echoing through the countryside. Hermione, having searched every compartment with growing concern, finally confirmed, "Harry and Ron are not on the train." Upon hearing this, John, who had been leisurely enjoying a chocolate frog, paused mid-bite. A thought crossed his mind. Perhaps they missed the train. It's not a big deal. We can just write to the school and they'll arrange for someone to pick them up. As he popped the remainder of the chocolate frog into his mouth, John turned his attention to Neville. Since visiting his parents over the holidays, Neville had seemed noticeably more subdued. "Neville, are you all right?" John inquired, his tone gentle. Neville, caught off guard, hesitated before nodding. "I'm fine, John." "Here, have some toffee," John offered, pressing the sweet into Neville's hands. His thoughts briefly lingered on Neville's parents and the devastating effects of the unforgivable curses they had endured. John himself felt a pang of guilt recalling his own use of the Cruciatus curse, resolving to avoid it whenever possible. Lost in thought, John's gaze drifted to the window just in time to spot a black dot in the distance, rapidly approaching. He blinked, disbelieving, as a familiar flying car zoomed past the train, its occupant's screams barely audible over the wind. "Mr. Wick, you're flying in the wrong direction," came a voice from within, followed by a panicked, "No, we're falling." John watched in stunned silence as the car veered off course, narrowly missing the bridge the train had just crossed, before disappearing from sight. "I could swear that was my father," he muttered to himself. If he wasn't mistaken, the car had been carrying 3 passengers, Harry, Ron, and his father, Watson Wick. John couldn't help but marvel at his father's audacity to pilot a flying car as if it were no different from driving on the road. "All I can do is pray that Harry and Ron emerge unscathed," he murmured, folding his hands in a silent prayer, leaving Hermione looking on in confusion. "Canary Wharf car god?" John mused, then quickly reassured Hermione, "Don't worry, Harry and the others will be fine." He added silently to himself, "Hopefully." "Thank you, John," Hermione replied, her anxiety somewhat alleviated. She couldn't help but wonder if Harry and Ron would have the sense to write to the school for help. Meanwhile, Harry and Ron were regretting their decision to trust Watson Wick, who seemed reliable at first glance. "John, John!" Ron shouted in desperation, convinced that only John could save them from their reckless uncle. Harry, having hit his head on the car's roof for the 10th time, silently agreed. Despite the car's sturdy build, Harry feared his head might not withstand much more. Watson, on the other hand, was thoroughly enjoying himself. With a casual flick of the wrist, he sent the car hurtling through the air at breakneck speed. "Long live the Canary Wharf car god," he cheered, his exuberance contrasting sharply with Harry and Ron's cries of terror. Upon arriving at Hogwarts, the second-year students were greeted not by the familiar boats across the Black Lake, but by a line of horseless carriages outside Hogsmeade Station. Hermione, ever curious, wondered aloud, what pulls these carriages? "It's the Thestrals, magical creatures visible only to those who have faced death," John explained, his gaze fixed on the invisible beings leading their carriage. The realization that he could see them, likely due to witnessing Professor Quirrell's demise, sent a shiver down his spine. As they boarded the carriage, Daphne Greengrass, a Slytherin girl, hurried to join them, her actions betraying her intention to be near John. "Hi, John. Long time no see," she greeted, her attempt at nonchalance failing to mask her true motives. John responded with a polite smile, welcoming her and the others to share the carriage ride to Hogwarts. When he saw her, he greeted her warmly. Despite being in the same house, his interactions with other Slytherins were minimal. Apart from Malfoy and his two cronies, Daphne was the one he conversed with the most, though their total exchanges didn't exceed 10 sentences. Upon seeing Daphne, Hermione immediately felt a surge of natural hostility, a testament to the inexplicable intuition women often possess. She glared at Daphne, who responded by flicking her blonde hair back proudly, shimmering like satin under the night sky. Neville sensed the atmosphere cooling. Was it simply because night had fallen? The interior of the carriage was dim, filled with a faint musty scent mingled with straw. Once all the students were aboard, a procession of 100 carriages made its way toward Hogwarts, following the dirt path. Pulled by Thestrals, they approached the main entrance, where winged boars stood guard on either side. The journey continued up the driveway, culminating at the stone steps of the Oak Gate, the grand entrance to Hogwarts Castle. From there, the students made their way into the Great Hall, soon joined by the first-year students who had arrived by the Black Ship. Hermione scanned the room for Harry and Ron, feeling uneasy upon noticing John also taking his seat at the Slytherin table. Malfoy intended to sit next to John, but Daphne quickly claimed the seat for herself. "This is my place." Malfoy expressed his displeasure, but a single glance from Daphne, laden with clear intent, made him reconsider. "Ahem, perhaps a change in perspective will be beneficial," he mused, acknowledging Daphne's pure-blood lineage, which rivaled his own. With a sense of begrudging gallantry, Malfoy found a seat across from John. John remarked to Malfoy, "Draco, you've grown taller." Delighted by the observation, Malfoy eagerly inquired, "Really? By how much?" John gestured broadly before adjusting to indicate a modest increase. "About this much." Malfoy was thrilled, sharing his ambitious plans for the semester, including his father's promise to donate Nimbus 2001 brooms to the team. "With me as Seeker, we'll surely outmatch Potter," he boasted, unaware of the unfair advantage this provided. John, however, believed Malfoy's skills were sufficient without resorting to such measures. "Your flying is commendable, Draco. There's no need for shortcuts," he advised, a sentiment Malfoy appreciated, though his father would disagree. As the sorting ceremony commenced, John's attention was drawn to Ginny Weasley's unmistakable red hair. Snape was conspicuously absent, likely in pursuit of Harry and the others. John's speculation was confirmed when Snape entered the Great Hall with a stern expression, summoning, "John Wick, come with me." Malfoy, sensing the tension, whispered, "What did you do? I've never seen Professor Snape so irate. Please, don't let us lose points." John, puzzled, could only respond, "I don't know, but I must go," before departing under Daphne's concerned gaze. In Snape's office, surrounded by bottles and jars filled with potion ingredients and creature parts, John faced his living father, realizing the source of Snape's displeasure. John couldn't help but press his fingers to his forehead, a gesture of exasperation, as he observed Professor Snape. The irony of the situation was not lost on him. A man who had been deceived by the patriarch of another family was now, in turn, deceiving his own son. The complexity of Snape's character was evident in his actions, a blend of bitterness and a desperate attempt to protect, albeit in a misguided way. As John's gaze met Snape's, he was met with a look that could only be described as murderous. Despite the intensity of Snape's glare, John sensed an underlying vulnerability. It was a look that spoke volumes of Snape's internal struggle. A man caught between the world of deceit he had woven around himself and the stark reality of his actions. Feeling a surge of determination, John believed that Snape was not beyond redemption. The path to saving him from the web of lies and resentment he had entangled himself in would not be easy, but John felt compelled to try. He understood that Snape's actions, however misguided, stemmed from a place of deep-seated pain and a flawed sense of duty. In that moment, John realized the importance of empathy and understanding. He knew that to reach Snape, he would need to navigate the complex layers of his persona, to offer a semblance of hope in the darkness that had consumed him. It was a daunting task, but John was ready to undertake it, driven by a belief in the power of redemption and the human capacity for change. Chapter 52. Punishment and Flying Boots. John Wick, with genuine concern, inquired, "Professor, will this incident result in a deduction of my points?" His question only served to darken Professor Snape's already grim expression. "Mr. Wick, your Muggle father has not only illegally breached Hogwarts' defenses, but also damaged the exceedingly rare humping willow," Snape said, his voice laced with disbelief and irritation, particularly at the thought of Muggles maneuvering a flying car. He then sarcastically referenced a report from the Evening Prophet. Furthermore, a group of Muggles witnessed an old car flying over the post office. This incident has breached the statute of secrecy, and Mr. Watson Wick's unauthorized entry into Hogwarts is a grave violation of our school's regulations. Upon hearing Snape's words, John's demeanor turned serious, realizing the gravity of the situation. Even Professor McGonagall and Dumbledore were taken aback by the news. Harry and Ron, meanwhile, trembled with fear, and Watson Wick, the man at the center of the controversy, seemed to grasp the extent of his actions and their potential to mislead his son. "Professor, should there be consequences, let them fall on me. Spare the children any embarrassment," Watson declared, standing tall and earning the admiration of Harry and Ron for his adult responsibility. Professor McGonagall, wearing a stern expression, entered the room. Harry half expected her to transform herself in anger, but instead she simply lit the fireplace with her wand and invited everyone to sit. "Explain yourselves," she demanded, her tone reminiscent of catching them on an unauthorized night excursion the previous year. Harry and Ron, seizing a glimmer of hope, quickly defended themselves. "Please, don't blame us. The barrier at the station wouldn't let us through." They explained the malfunction at the platform, but McGonagall, unimpressed, retorted sharply, "Why didn't you send an owl? Surely you have one, don't you?" Harry, realizing the oversight, was at a loss for words. McGonagall then turned to Watson Wick, who remained silent, understanding that this matter was beyond her jurisdiction and best handled by Dumbledore himself. Dumbledore, upon his arrival, did not offer his usual smile. "Mr. Wick, it's unfortunate that we meet again under these circumstances," he said, addressing Watson with a tone of regret. Watson, feeling the weight of his actions, admitted, "It's all my fault, Professor Dumbledore. I shouldn't have involved my children in this." Dumbledore responded, "Mr. Wick, were you a student, I would write to your parents. However, I will simply arrange for your return home and trust you will keep this matter to yourself." This was a relief to Watson, sparing him from a potential obliviate charm. Turning to John, Dumbledore assigned him a unique punishment. "John, you are to tend to the humping willow until it has fully recovered." John, though frustrated by the unfairness of bearing the consequences of his father's actions, accepted the task, recognizing Dumbledore's leniency. Dumbledore then addressed Harry and Ron, who braced themselves for the worst. "We're expelled, aren't we?" Ron asked despairingly. Dumbledore, maintaining a stern demeanor, assured them, "Not today, Mr. Weasley. However, I will inform your families of this incident and warn you that any further misconduct will result in expulsion." This outcome visibly irritated Professor Snape, who found it unjust that no points were deducted, especially considering that the incident occurred before the term started. Snape's protest highlighted his frustration with what he perceived as favoritism, igniting his eagerness to deduct points in the future. John couldn't possibly blame himself, right? He was the sole Slytherin student there, while Harry and his companion were under the watchful eye of Professor McGonagall from Gryffindor. Don't rush to send Mr. Wick to the station just yet." Upon witnessing John's expression, Professor Snape's face darkened, teetering on the edge of fury before settling into a sardonic tone. John, not one to make a mockery of himself, escorted his living father, Watson Wick, to the station with a sense of duty. At the station, Hagrid was already waiting. He waved eagerly upon spotting John approaching. "Hagrid, please," John implored with genuine relief at seeing the familiar face. "If my father causes any trouble, feel free to knock him out. Thank you." This unusual request from a seemingly dutiful son prompted Watson Wick to voice his protest, to which Hagrid responded with an awkward smile, assuring he wouldn't resort to such measures. John, however, had a trump card up his sleeve. With a calm demeanor, he simply stated, "I'll write to my mother." This threat effectively silenced Watson. Upon his return home, Mrs. Wick, having received the letter, was there to greet him. It was rumored that Watson took a week off work, citing illness, too apprehensive to face his colleagues after the incident. Ding, the second phase of the Hogwarts task begins. Complete the second school year as a magic apprentice. Reward, +1 to magical bloodline, 3 to any attribute. Ding, a new task has been triggered. Nurture the Whomping Willow back to health and receive the Botanist blessing. Botanist, increases the success rate of cultivating plants. Ding, a challenge task has been triggered. Maintain the highest grades in your year until the end of the semester and receive +1 to any attribute, along with the Diligent and Studious blessing. Diligent and Studious, studying for more than 2 hours continuously grants an additional hour of enhanced efficiency. Activating the system now. Are you testing to see if I'll be expelled? John mused after his father's departure, as the second phase at Hogwarts commenced. He had his suspicions that the system's timing was a test, pondering if his earlier actions might have led to his expulsion. Thankfully, everything was still on track. Dumbledore was not like Principal Phineas Nigellus Black, who was notoriously the most disliked principal in Hogwarts history. If he were, John speculated that 3 students might have been sent packing that day. Having missed dinner, John decided to visit the kitchen to see if he could secure a meal. It was considered a great honor among the Hogwarts house elves to serve a wizard. After obtaining his dinner, John opted not to return to his dormitory, but instead headed to the room of requirement. After pacing back and forth in front of the large tapestry 3 times, he entered the training room, which he hadn't visited in a while, and found covered in a new layer of dust. With a flick of his wand, John cleared the dust, sending it out the window. He then retrieved the Ironwick sword from his bag. Simultaneously, he donned a pair of flying boots, which adjusted to fit his feet perfectly. The boots, initially too large, now felt as comfortable as if he were barefoot. The feather of a rune horse is lighter than a spider's silk and enchanted with a levitation spell, John noted as he tapped his heel, causing 2 wings to extend from the sides of the boots. With a single leap, he soared 3 meters into the air, the small wings fluttering to keep him aloft. Gripping the Ironwick sword, John uttered a spell, imbuing the blade with magic. "I am a fire dragon," he declared. As the incantation was completed, the sword spell ignited a red glow, and flames danced along the blade. A dozen large humanoid targets appeared in the training area, suspended in mid-air. With the flaming sword in hand, John slashed through them, each target neatly bisected, flames erupting from the cuts. Without the need for a wand, John effortlessly destroyed all the targets. Amidst the flames, he landed on the ground, surveying the destruction he had wrought. He then called out to the training ground, Hard Mode. The training ground offered 4 levels of difficulty: Training, Entry, Intermediate, and Master. John was ready to challenge himself further, pushing his limits in this magical and demanding environment. John stood in the training room, his gaze fixed on the stationary training dummy before him. It was designed solely for testing purposes, offering no movement or resistance. However, the real challenge lay ahead, as the training session was about to escalate. At the outset, participants were faced with a target that merely dodged, providing a basic level of difficulty. But as the stakes were raised, an attacking automaton, eerily reminiscent of a puppet, would emerge to confront them. This was the Hard Mode, a level John had previously attempted but failed to conquer, primarily due to the inadequacy of his sword. Now, armed with a new weapon, a sense of determination washed over John. He was eager to test his mettle against the formidable challenge that had bested him before. With a decisive command, the humanoid target that had been the focus of his attention was swiftly retracted, making way for a more daunting trial. From the depths of the fireplace, 5 figures emerged, each bearing a striking resemblance to a wizard. These were no ordinary targets. They were the attacking puppets designed to simulate a real combat scenario. As soon as they appeared, they wasted no time in launching their assault on John. The air in the training room grew tense as John readied himself, his grip tightening around the hilt of his new sword. The puppets advanced, their movements eerily lifelike, as they closed in on him. John knew that this was his moment to prove that he could overcome the challenge that had once defeated him. With a deep breath, he stepped forward to meet his adversaries, his resolve as sharp as the blade in his hand. Chapter 53, Mastering Difficult Mode and Adapting to Training Field Changes. As one of the 5 dolls emerged, it dashed towards John, brandishing a wooden sword. John swiftly raised his own sword to block the attack, then with a fluid motion, sidestepped and delivered a slashing blow to the puppet's waist. The speed and damage have both increased, John observed, turning to regard the doll he had bisected. He reflected on the blessing he had received at the end of the last school year. Knight, when wielding a sword with both hands, your power significantly increases, and it further amplifies when mounted. This particular blessing had cost him 2 large margins, but John felt it was well earned, considering the risks he had taken to obtain it. In the previous semester, battling a puppet had nearly brought him to his knees, even without a direct hit. Despite being made of wood, the puppet's swords were incredibly hard and heavy, capable of puncturing the ground with a casual swing. "Today I'll conquer the difficult mode," John declared, his spirits high as the second puppet advanced. Its speed was remarkable, charging towards him. John steadied himself and then cast Reducto. A beam of white light struck the doll, shattering it into pieces. Holding his wand in his left hand, John nodded in satisfaction at the spell's enhanced effect. "With the growth of my magical experience, the potency of my spells has also increased," he mused, not just focusing on swordsmanship. However, his actions seemed to provoke the remaining puppets. In an instant, 3 puppets launched an attack simultaneously. One exhibited immense strength, another unmatched speed, and the third demonstrated agility and the occasional spellcasting. John's expression darkened as he struggled to fend off the attacks while remaining vigilant against potential spells. The relentless assault quickly overwhelmed him, and a red light from one of the wizard puppets sent him flying out of the training area. He landed hard, feeling nauseous and vomited, a slug slipping out in the process. Damn it! The shock of the sight triggered another wave of nausea, and more slugs appeared. Frantically, John grabbed his wand to dispel the curse. He had removed his amulet for training, not anticipating a minor yet humiliating curse from the puppet. A mage, an assassin, and a warrior, John analyzed after clearing the spell and disposing of the slugs. The trio's synergy was impeccable. One engaged him head-on, another distracted him from the side, and the third delivered powerful attacks. This combination made John feel as though he was a boss character, being overwhelmed by a coordinated team. After several attempts and managing to dispel the effects that had enlarged his front teeth, John conceded, "Fighting these 3 is challenging. Perhaps it would be easier if I leveled up." He summoned his panel to review his stats. Magic Power, Level 3, Thal85 1500. Spells, Levitation Charm, Level 4, Transfiguration, Level 2, with Dragon option, Disillusionment Charm, Level 4, Fiery Flames, Level 4, Bone Crushing Spell, Level 3, Fiery Blast, Level 3, Mind Blocking Spell, Level 4. Skills, Short Weapon Mastery, Great Sword Mastery, Level 4, Firearms Mastery, Level 1, Runes Mastery, Level 2, Alchemy Mastery, Level 2. Blessings, Physical Fitness, Quick Attack, Precision, Scholar 2.0, Pilot, Long Distance Running, Sword Dance, Night Devil, Trollbuster, Knight, Fire Swallower, Deterrence, Hardening, Dragon Speech. Although his great sword skill was at Level 4, it seemed insufficient against the puppet trio. John contemplated upgrading, but hesitated due to his limited random points. Forget it. Hogwarts is safe for now, he reasoned, deciding to conserve his resources. The spirit of adventure and challenge within him remained undaunted, ready to face whatever the training field or Hogwarts had in store next. Refusing to admit defeat and still feeling the sting of disgust from earlier, John decided to dismantle the 3 dolls as a way to vent his frustration. With a light tap, he activated the mastery of the Greatsword, and instantly his familiarity with the weapon intensified. Reflecting on his previous battles, John realized the folly in what he once considered a perfect defense. It was as if, through thousands of repetitions, he had reacquainted himself with the sword, now wielding it as naturally as one of his own limbs. A weapon is an extension of a limb, he mused, focusing intently on the 3 dolls before him. As they advanced, their gaze collectively fixed on John. "Come on, I am the fire dragon," he whispered, reigniting the flames along Ironwick's blade. John launched the first attack, charging forward with the ferocity of a wild horse. The warrior doll moved to intercept, its wooden sword slashing downwards. Instead of retreating, John met the attack head-on, holding his sword with both hands. He narrowly avoided the wooden blade, his body brushing dangerously close as he swung his great sword, cutting through the air to strike the warrior doll. Suddenly, a red light darted towards John. With a swift stomp of his right foot, he dodged, allowing the light to miss his blade by inches. Almost immediately, he sensed an attack from behind, an assassin puppet strike. John's sword swung out in a reflexive block, using the back of his sword to deflect the blow. The warrior doll, seizing the moment, attacked once more. John, with a quick flick of his wrists, repelled the assassin and brought his sword down in a powerful arc, severing the sword-holding hand of the warrior doll. As the mage puppet launched another attack, John seized the opportunity to draw his wand, casting the iron armor curse to block the spell. Simultaneously, he pivoted on his left foot, hurling the great sword with his right hand. The sword's hilt slid through his palm, extending the blade as if by magic, just in time to impale the assassin puppet sneaking up from behind. With one doll disabled and another impaled, only the mage puppet continued its barrage of spells. John, persisting with the iron armor curse for defense, countered with a spell of his own, striking the one-armed warrior doll and rendering it incapacitated. Advancing towards the mage doll, John noted the significant difference in mobility between the mage and the assassin. With a flick of his wand, he launched a ball of white light that struck the mage, sending it flying. Seizing the moment, John's sword, ablaze with the fire of Iron Wick, pierced through the mage doll, the flames consuming it instantly. The challenge was finally over. A sense of relief washed over John as the weight of his frustration lifted. He sat down, feeling rejuvenated. If this is only level 5, what does the master level entail? He pondered. His curiosity about the higher levels piqued. The thought of facing challenges of this magnitude made him wonder if one would have to confront Voldemort alone. It seemed unlikely. As John rested, the wooden sword in the corner began to transform. The once crude, oversized sword shrank, shedding excess material that fell to the ground and took on a human-like form. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Dumbledore had just returned from attending to some matters. He noticed the sword of Gryffindor trembling slightly. Approaching it with a look of astonishment, he was interrupted by the Sorting Hat. "Albus," it said, prompting Dumbledore to turn, a realization dawning on him. "Is he back?" "It wasn't him. It was his secret chamber that was opened," the Sorting Hat clarified. As the keeper of Hogwarts secrets, the Sorting Hat was privy to the deepest mysteries of the school. Dumbledore, intrigued, stepped closer to the Sorting Hat and inquired, "Who is it?" "The founder of the Fourth Academy has always been enigmatic," Dumbledore mused, his thoughts drifting to the legacies left behind by the founders of Hogwarts. Each of the 4 houses had its own unique inheritance, much like the Chamber of Secrets of Slytherin that had once been revealed. The man mentioned by the Sorting Hat was undoubtedly Gryffindor. Gryffindor's Chamber of Secrets. Could it be you, Harry? Dumbledore pondered. He believed that such a chamber would only open for a worthy successor, and who better than the prophesied savior, Harry Potter? The sword of Gryffindor ceased its trembling, prompting Dumbledore to delve deeper into his thoughts. Could it be sensing the impending danger as well? He wondered. Meanwhile, John had taken enough time to rest and decided it was time to return. Rising to his feet, he turned to retrieve the sword he had plunged into the dummy. The flames that once danced along its blade were now extinguished, and the spell's red glow had faded. As he turned to leave, he paused, sensing a presence. Standing before him was a young man, adorned with a wizard's hat, his gaze fixed on John. In that moment, John felt as though he was the prey under the watchful eye of a lion. The atmosphere was charged with an unspoken tension, a silent acknowledgement of the challenges that lay ahead. John, aware of the gravity of the situation, knew that the path forward was fraught with danger and mystery. The legacy of Gryffindor, the impending peril, and the role he was to play in the unfolding events were all pieces of a puzzle he was yet to fully understand. Chapter 54. The Inheritance Test and the Roaring Letter. The man before John had red hair cascading over his shoulders, a handsome visage, and a beard adorning his chin. His skin seemed to be flecked with sawdust, giving him an almost wooden appearance. An alarm bell rang in John's mind. Silently, he clenched his sword, and his wand, held in his left hand, was poised to cast a spell at a moment's notice. "Who are you?" John inquired, as the last piece of what seemed like sawdust adhered to the man's face. The once thick wooden sword in the man's grasp had now transformed into a twig-like wand. Opening his eyes wide, the man's first words were, "You must be a Gryffindor, right?" I'm from Slytherin," John corrected. "Slytherin?" The man looked at John, bewildered. He wielded a large sword in his right hand and a wand in his left, a unique combination for attack. "You claim to be from Slytherin?" Godric Gryffindor chuckled, then said, "Don't jest. You've conquered the test I left behind, and my hat wouldn't have placed you in Slytherin." His confidence suggested he thought this was merely a playful remark from the young wizard, but John sensed something amiss. "Your hat? The sorting hat?" John ventured. "Indeed, I am Godric Gryffindor. You may also refer to me as the old headmaster if you prefer," the man introduced himself. Gryffindor, appearing to be in his prime, instinctively reached to stroke his beard before remembering his current youthful form and stopping himself. "The founder of one of the 4 houses?" John exclaimed, astounded. "You may address me as such. This is the secret chamber I left behind. Impressive, isn't it? How fares Gryffindor these days? Have we triumphed over Slytherin in the House Cup?" Gryffindor still believed John to be a Gryffindor student, and upon mentioning his old friend Salazar Slytherin, he couldn't help but snort disdainfully. It was clear that the rivalry between Gryffindor and Slytherin was long-standing, dating back to the founding of Hogwarts. Noticing Gryffindor's evident disdain for Slytherin, John silently gestured to the green and silver on his robes, saying, "I truly am a Slytherin. If you doubt me, just look." The vibrant green and silver of his robes stood out, causing Gryffindor's mood to sour instantly. "Has my hat malfunctioned, sorting you into Slytherin?" Gryffindor wondered aloud, now seriously questioning if there was an issue with his sorting hat. John, unsure of what to say, offered an awkward smile. The revelation that students who passed the test were not necessarily from Gryffindor seemed to unsettle Godric Gryffindor. Nevertheless, the secret chamber was intended for the entire school, designed to identify a worthy successor. Despite the heir being from Slytherin, Gryffindor had no choice but to accept it. "Well, you have passed the test and are deemed worthy of my inheritance," Gryffindor declared, waving his wand. The fallen doll reverted to its original state and walked into the fireplace, while 2 chairs materialized out of thin air. Gryffindor seated himself in one, his wand still in hand. "As long as you complete my next challenge, I will grant you the power you seek," he continued. John, sitting opposite, hesitated before asking, "If I accept your challenge, will I be expelled from Slytherin?" Gryffindor responded dismissively, "Would expulsion be such a bad thing? After all, pureblood families are usually not lacking in wealth." "But, head of Gryffindor, I'm Muggle-born," John revealed. Gryffindor was taken aback. "Even as a Slytherin, you're a Muggle-born? What has become of Hogwarts in my absence, that Slytherin has been infiltrated by Muggles?" Gryffindor, overwhelmed by this revelation, needed a moment to process the information. The more he pondered, the more perplexed he became. Could it be that Gryffindor and Slytherin have swapped identities? He glanced at John again, considering the possibility more seriously. it became evident that Godric Gryffindor was a figure of significant stature. Both he and Salazar Slytherin, characterized by their bravery and calmness respectively, pursued adventure and yearned for magic. Despite their contrasting natures, they were best friends, even in the face of their eventual parting. Days later, they would part ways amicably. Godric Gryffindor, however, didn't dwell on such thoughts. He reassured, "Do not fret, my legacy spans the entire school, and you shall not face expulsion." Okay, John sighed in relief upon hearing he wouldn't be expelled. The prospect of inheriting such a legacy was enticing, but expulsion would tarnish any accolades, even in the eyes of a resurrected Voldemort. The trial consists of 3 parts: the bird in the forest, the lion in the mountain, and the swordsman's courage, Gryffindor explained. "I will be observing your performance throughout." As Gryffindor was about to initiate the trial with a wave of his wand, John hesitantly raised his hand to interrupt. "I apologize, head of Gryffindor, but I might not be ready at this moment, and it's also past my bedtime." Gryffindor, momentarily taken aback and holding his breath, had his plans interrupted by John's request. After a brief pause, he conceded, "Then we shall reschedule." "Thank you, head of Gryffindor." John bowed respectfully and exited, his heart racing at the thought of the impending trial. Ding! Challenge mission triggered. Gryffindor Legacy Phase 1, The Bird in the Forest. Reward Forest Flyer Blessing. Currently without a single talisman, John was not prepared to take unnecessary risks. Caution was his guiding principle for longevity. He decided to rest and recuperate in his dormitory before facing the trial. The next day, John made his way to the Great Hall for breakfast. The morning spread was lavish, featuring porridge, pickled herring, eggs wrapped in bacon, and more. Despite the unusual combination of pickled herring with porridge, John's palate had grown accustomed to such fare over the years. As he enjoyed his breakfast, Daphne Greengrass, a blonde girl, sat beside him, her gaze fixed on his profile. She chuckled softly before mentioning, "John, did you know our Defense Against the Dark Arts professor this year is Gilderoy Lockhart? My mother adores him." John, sipping his porridge and pairing it with a slice of bacon, responded indifferently, "I've read his book. It's well written, though I'm curious about his teaching abilities." The frequent changes in Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers had resulted in a disparity in student proficiency. John pondered the school's stubbornness in this matter. Why not simply rename the course? Whether it's Defense Against the Dark Arts or Countering Dark Arts, the essence remains the same. The curse on the position, purportedly by Voldemort, shouldn't affect my tenure as a professor, he mused. The previous year's professor, Quirrell, had been lackluster in his teaching, yet John had learned that Quirrell's expertise in dark magic was far from mediocre. He had merely chosen to conceal his true capabilities. Draco Malfoy approached with his entourage, eager to share gossip with John. "Potter and that detestable Weasley have landed themselves in trouble again. They arrived at school in a flying car. It's a shame you missed the spectacle in the Great Hall yesterday." The news spread like wildfire, and Gryffindor House celebrated Harry's audacious stunt that night. However, Harry soon realized his folly, especially when Hermione, the most rational among their trio, expressed her disappointment. Her fascination with Gilderoy Lockhart's travels with vampires was momentarily overshadowed by her frustration with Harry's recklessness. The arrival of the post brought chaos to the Great Hall, with hundreds of owls swooping in. An elderly owl, belonging to the Weasley family, made a clumsy landing into Hermione's milk jug. "Errol!" Ron exclaimed, rescuing the disoriented owl and noticing the red envelope in its beak, a howler. John watched with interest, sensing the unfolding drama, especially as Malfoy's attention was captured by the scene. Malfoy turned around abruptly, his expression one of gleeful anticipation, as if he were about to watch an exceptionally entertaining spectacle. "Ha-ha! A howler letter! Weasley is going to suffer," he gloated, his voice dripping with schadenfreude. The lackey standing beside him mimicked a weeping gesture, adding to the mockery. Ron, on the other hand, was visibly reluctant to open the howler. Neville, trying to be helpful, whispered, "You'd better open it, Ron. Ignoring it only makes things worse. My grandmother sent me one once, and when I ignored it..." He shuddered, the memory of the consequences clearly still haunting him. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Ron swallowed hard. He didn't need to imagine the potential fallout. The dread was evident. With hands shaking from apprehension, he finally mustered the courage to open the roaring letter. As soon as he did, a deafening roar filled the entire hall, causing a visible tremor. John, who was observing the chaos, noticed a pinch of ashes fall into his porridge. Seizing the opportunity to avoid Malfoy's attention, he discreetly swapped his bowl with one in front of Malfoy. Malfoy, too engrossed in reveling in Weasley's misfortune, picked up the porridge and drank it with evident satisfaction. However, his enjoyment was short-lived, as the porridge was finished in just a few sips, leaving him wanting more. Chapter 55. Hogwarts Knows the King and the Humping Willow. The first class of the day was History of Magic. Before heading to class, John decided to visit the Humping Willow, a tree that had been previously injured by his father. The Humping Willow, a massive and temperamental willow tree located on the grounds of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, is known for its aggressive behavior towards anything that comes too close, lashing out with its branches at any perceived threat. Upon John's arrival at the Humping Willow, he found two individuals already there. One of them was boasting, "I once encountered a Humping Willow during my travels." "As long as you do this." "Stop it, you're only going to make it angrier," the other warned. "Don't worry, I'm Gilderoy Lockhart, holder of the Order of Merlin, 3rd class, and possessor of the most charming smile," the first speaker declared confidently. With a flick of his wand, Lockhart attempted a spell, only to infuriate the Humping Willow further. Professor Sprout, the herbology professor who happened to be nearby, was inadvertently caught in the crossfire and sent flying by the tree. At that moment, Professor Sprout was seething with anger towards Lockhart. She couldn't fathom why Dumbledore had allowed this disgraceful former Ravenclaw student to return as a professor. "It's all right, Professor Sprout. I've dealt with trolls. This injury is nothing," Lockhart blithely commented. "Stop it. Don't come any closer." Professor Sprout, mustering all her strength, quickly moved out of the Humping Willow's reach. She was genuinely frightened. Lockhart's interference could either result in her being seriously injured by the tree or by her own hand in frustration. Claiming that she needed to prepare for her upcoming class, she urged the bothersome Lockhart to leave immediately. "Is this the man who knows everything about defense against the dark arts?" John mused, having observed Lockhart's reckless endangerment of a fellow professor. He questioned the wisdom of hiring such a person, especially given the high turnover of defense against the dark arts professors. Remembering Lockhart's published works, John began to doubt whether the man's public persona matched the reality. "Are there charlatans even in the wizarding world?" John pondered, his skepticism growing as he approached the Humping Willow after the others had left. He knew of a secret passage beneath the tree from the Marauder's map, but getting close was a challenge due to the tree's hostility. As John neared, a branch swung violently towards him. He quickly stepped back, observing the tree's aggressive movements. Its sensitivity and activity could have unexpected benefits if used in amulets, John thought, eyeing the tree's wounds and contemplating how to obtain a piece of it. Without much hesitation, John cast Petrificus Totalis, freezing the tree's thrashing branches. Seizing the moment, he used his flying boots to leap up and cut off some of the damaged branches. After collecting the branches, John activated his flying boots once more and swiftly departed the scene. As the Humping Willow regained its mobility, it thrashed its branches in fury. "Ah, well, I'm not going to figure out how to treat you," John reasoned, feeling justified in his actions. To him, taking a small piece from such a large tree seemed inconsequential. Stuffing the branch into his bag, John turned and left, feeling that the task of treating the Humping Willow's injuries was better left to a professional, such as Professor Sprout. With class time approaching, John made his way to the History of Magic classroom, his mind still on the events at the Humping Willow and the peculiar defense against the dark arts professor. John was well versed in the labyrinth of secret passages within Hogwarts, which is why he remained unfazed even as the clock ticked dangerously close to the start of the History of Magic class. With a practiced step, he made his entrance into the classroom just in time. Professor Binns, the ghostly Instra, Uktor of the history of magic, had long ago forgotten to detach himself from his mortal slumber, resulting in lessons that were as monotonous and lifeless as his spectral appearance. Despite his best efforts, John struggled to keep his eyelids from drooping. Officially, he was there to learn about the history of magic, but his real focus lay on the alchemy notes hidden within his textbook. The afternoon promised a shift in pace with defense against the dark arts. During lunch, Ron lamented over his malfunctioning wand, while Daphne expressed her excitement for the class, influenced by her mother's praise of Professor Lockhart. John, however, harbored no such expectations, especially after witnessing Lockhart's morning spectacle involving Harry. As he carefully peeled and consumed his potato, he couldn't help but notice Malfoy's absence, likely sulking over Harry's latest encounter with Lockhart, which had sparked envy among the Malfoy children. Daphne had forgotten her copy of I Can Be Magical for Lockhart's signature and had gone back to retrieve it. Hermione approached, clutching Lockhart's book, her cheeks tinged with a blush of anticipation. "I can't wait to see what kind of exciting class Professor Lockhart has planned, just like the adventures in his book," she said, her voice filled with hope. John hesitated, not wanting to crush her spirits. "Well, I'm not sure it'll be quite what you're expecting," he gently warned, pondering how the revelation might disillusion Hermione, who was currently basking in her admiration for Lockhart. The scene, John mused, would make for scandalous footage should Hermione ever ascend to the position of Minister of Magic. Meanwhile, Harry found himself in an awkward situation, not only due to Malfoy's taunts, but also because of Lockhart's overbearing presence. Colin Creevey, a first-year Gryffindor and avid Harry Potter fan, eagerly snapped photos of Harry, much to his discomfort. Lockhart's insistence on a joint photo only added to Harry's embarrassment. As the afternoon class approached, Lockhart, basking in his perceived success, whisked Harry away, leaving Ron and Hermione behind. John finished his lunch and approached Ron, who was visibly upset after Malfoy's mockery. "Ron, don't let it get to you. I heard about your wand," John said, offering a sympathetic ear. Ron, frustrated, showed John the broken wand. Upon inspection, John was relieved to find the core intact. "I've been studying wand making. I might be able to fix this for you," he offered, much to Ron's delight. The prospect of avoiding another scolding from Mrs. Weasley was a relief to Ron. "We should head to class. I'll start on the wand repair once I've gathered the necessary materials," John promised as they made their way to the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. The classroom was a stark contrast to the others, adorned with countless photos of Gilderoy Lockhart himself. It was a testament to the professor's vanity. Lockhart's entrance was as flamboyant as his reputation suggested. Clad in a turquoise robe complemented by a matching top hat with a gold rim, his blonde hair gleamed under the classroom lights. His appearance was as ostentatious as the tales of his adventures, setting the stage for what was sure to be an unforgettable class. Malfoy's discomfort was palpable as he sneered at the photograph of Lockhart and Harry, his disdain for the celebrity wizard clear. In stark contrast, the girls in the room reacted with visible excitement, their eyes sparkling and cheeks flushed with adoration. Many of them, influenced by their mothers or their own admiration, were fervent fans of Lockhart. Despite being known as a charlatan, Lockhart's charm and good looks were undeniable. He had a knack for self-promotion, as evidenced by his introduction. "I am Gilderoy Lockhart, recipient of the Order of Merlin, 3rd class, honorary member of the Dark Force Defense League, and 5-time winner of Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award. Though I don't like to talk about that. It wasn't my smile that banished Ed the Banshee from Wan Lun," he boasted, ending with a quip that unfortunately went over the heads of his audience. John could only shake his head in disbelief. Among the litany of self-congratulatory titles, the only one that seemed remotely relevant to teaching was his honorary membership in the Dark Force Defense League. Yet, even that felt superficial. John's skepticism was soon validated when Lockhart revealed the day's activity, a questionnaire about none other than himself. The questions were as follows. 1. What is Gilderoy Lockhart's favorite color? 2. What was Gilderoy Lockhart's secret ambition? 3. What do you consider Gilderoy Lockhart's greatest achievement to date? John was incredulous. These questions seemed more suited to a fan club meeting than a defense against the dark arts class. The absurdity of the situation was not lost on him, as he wondered if they were there to learn or simply to indulge Lockhart's ego. Chapter 56. Wisps and Deterrence. Ah, it seems almost no one remembers my fondness for the lilac color, a detail I shared in A Year with the Tibetan Snowman, Lockhart lamented as he reviewed the test papers. His disappointment was palpable, given the student's failure to answer his simple questions. Yet, he couldn't help but offer a mischievous wink to comfort the young wizards. Ron, along with his classmates, struggled to contain their amusement. Hermione, however, remained the sole figure of concentration in the room until Lockhart unexpectedly mentioned her name, causing her to startle. But Miss Hermione Granger is aware that my secret ambition is to rid the world of evil and to launch my own line of hair conditioners, Lockhart announced, his surprise turning into relief upon reading Hermione's test paper. Indeed, exceptional individuals always stand out, he remarked joyfully. Where is Miss Hermione Granger? Hermione, her hand shaking, raised it to acknowledge her correct answer. Splendid, 10 points for Gryffindor, Lockhart declared, sending waves of excitement through Hermione. It was her first time earning points ahead of John, and she couldn't help but look at him with a sense of triumphant challenge in her eyes. John sensed something amiss in Hermione's gaze. The once disheartened student seemed reinvigorated, ready to surpass John once more. Unbeknownst to Lockhart, his casual actions had rekindled the competitive spirit in Hermione. Lockhart then placed a large cage, shrouded with a cloth, on the podium. His exaggerated gestures hinted at something ominous. Prepare yourselves. I am here to teach you how to defend against the darkest entities known to the wizarding world. You will confront your worst fears in this classroom. His voice carried a hint of menace, designed to instill fear in the young wizards. Sensing he might have overdone it, Lockhart quickly reassured them. But fear not, for as long as I am here, you shall be safe. All I ask is for you to remain calm. The class fell silent, their laughter ceasing as some, like Neville in the front row, visibly tensed. Please, try not to scream. It will only provoke them, Lockhart warned, his tone low and foreboding, successfully casting a pall of terror over the room. As Lockhart unveiled the cage, the class held its breath in anticipation. Seamus, who typically maintained his composure, couldn't contain his laughter when, instead of the feared Dementors, a group of Cornish pixies was revealed. These small, iron-blue creatures, with their pointed faces and shrill voices, were more akin to noisy budgerigars than terrifying beasts. Lockhart, embarrassed by Seamus's reaction, defensively claimed, "They may be small, but these creatures are as cunning as devils." His attempt to salvage the situation was met with more laughter, much to his chagrin. "Well, let's see how you handle them," Lockhart declared, opening the cage to unleash the pixies. Chaos ensued as the pixies darted around the classroom, lifting students by their ears and shattering the window glass. True to Lockhart's words, they wreaked havoc like little demons, spraying ink everywhere. One pixie, daring to approach John, was met with a threatening glare that sent it flying away in terror. Clearly, even the Cornish pixies knew better than to provoke certain individuals. Lockhart, in a desperate attempt to regain control, hastily instructed the students on how to manage the pandemonium. His efforts, however, only highlighted the gap between his boasts and his actual ability to manage magical creatures, much to the amusement and dismay of his students. As the chaos unfolded in the classroom, with elves darting about and students either trying to catch them or avoid being splattered with ink, John had had enough. With a commanding presence, he stood up amidst the disorder, his voice cutting through the noise like a cold blade. "Enough," he shouted, and an aura of authority, reminiscent of a dragon's might, radiated from him. This sudden display of power caused the mischievous Vest to freeze in their tracks, and even Professor Lockhart, caught off guard, yelped in fear and made a hasty retreat from the room. The elves, overwhelmed by John's presence, trembled and collapsed in a heap, their pitiful state drawing a mix of reactions from the students. John, maintaining his composure, quickly brought an end to the mayhem. With a flick of his wand, he cast a transfiguration spell, that is, transforming a nearby table into a cage that corralled the still-escaping elves. As the bell signaling the end of class rang, the students snapped out of their daze, looking around as if waking from a dream. As John made his way to the door, a student's voice broke the silence. "Aren't you going to dismiss the class?" "Right," John replied, acknowledging the oversight. The students' reactions varied. Daphne gazed at John with newfound respect, while Malfoy was momentarily speechless. The Slytherins erupted into cheers, viewing John as the hero who had salvaged the lesson. "Cool, that was amazing!" exclaimed Seamus from Gryffindor, impressed by John's ability to intimidate the elf into submission. "I felt like he was a fire dragon just now. It was just too scary," Harry added, sharing in the awe. Ron, however, was more terrified by the thought of enduring another of Lockhart's classes than by John's display of power. "I never want to take Lockhart's class again. It's a nightmare," he declared. Hermione, trying to defend her idol, suggested that Lockhart might have been giving them a chance to practice, but her confidence waned as the conversation continued. The incident highlighted John's understanding of how deterrence could be effectively used against lesser magical creatures. He considered this ability, which stemmed from his natural presence and strength, as a potential magical skill. Later, tasked by Dumbledore with caring for the Homping Willow, John approached the task with a sense of duty. Despite his initial attempt to calm the tree with his presence alone, he resorted to using a petrification spell when his deterrence proved insufficient. After applying dragon dung around the tree, a beneficial treatment for plants, the Homping Willow settled down. Back in his dormitory, John crafted an amulet from the Homping Willow's branches, designed to alert the wearer to approaching danger. This amulet, sensitive to even the faintest malice, was a testament to John's ingenuity and connection to the magical world around him. With preparations complete, including a bag filled with potions for detoxification and fire protection, John set his sights on the Room of Requirement. His mind focused on the challenges ahead. He was ready to push his boundaries and explore the depths of his magical abilities. John tapped his foot on the ground 3 times, and as he did so, a door materialized in front of him. Stepping inside, he found Gryffindor already waiting. John gave a nod, signaling his readiness. "I'm prepared to begin the test," he declared. With a graceful wave of Gryffindor's wand, the Room of Requirement underwent a dramatic transformation. Vines sprouted from the floor, entwining around them, while trees burst forth from the earth, their branches reaching skyward. The transformation unfolded over several moments, and by the time it ceased, John found himself standing in the midst of a vast forest. It was his first encounter with such a use of the Room of Requirement. Had he not witnessed it with his own eyes, he might have believed he had been transported into the heart of the Forbidden Forest. The air was thick with the scent of moss and damp earth, a stark contrast to the usual ambiance of the Room of Requirement. John looked around, marveling at the intricate details of the forest that had been conjured around him. The trees towered above, their leaves whispering secrets in a language only the wind understood. The ground beneath his feet felt alive, pulsating with the magic that had created this place. Gryffindor's presence was a reassuring constant in the ever-changing landscape of the room. Remember, the test will challenge you in ways you might not expect. "Stay vigilant," Gryffindor advised, his voice echoing slightly in the vast expanse of the forest. John took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs. He was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, his determination fueled by the knowledge that this was no ordinary test. It was a journey through the depths of magic, a testament to the power and creativity that the Room of Requirement held within its walls. Chapter 57, The Quest for the Golden Snidget. Gryffindor stood beside John, leaning comfortably against a tree. "In this forest, there's a golden bird known as the Golden Snidget. Your task is to find it," he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. John surveyed the vast expanse of the forest, which bore a striking resemblance to the Forbidden Forest. "Are you certain it's here?" he asked skeptically. "Finding anyone in this forest is challenging enough, let alone a snidget that's the size of a golden snitch." Gryffindor's half-smile widened. "Of course, it's here. Moreover, you'd better locate it before dusk. The night brings other creatures to the fore," he warned, his tone suggesting he was looking forward to the spectacle. John pondered briefly before embarking on his search. The Snidget, known for its speed and elusiveness, made the task seem daunting, akin to searching for a needle in a haystack. After an extensive search yielded no results, John resorted to a more drastic measure. Pointing his wand at a tree, he cast Reducto. The spell hit the tree, causing it to explode and a flurry of birds to take flight. Despite his careful observation, the golden gleam of the Snidget was nowhere to be seen. Time for a more direct approach, John decided. Donning his flying boots, he soared into the air, casting shattering curses in all directions. The forest shook under the force of the explosions. Gryffindor watched in surprise. He hadn't anticipated such a bold strategy to find the Snidget, yet upon reflection, he recognized the cleverness in John's method. The Snidget, being highly sensitive and swift, would likely evade danger and reveal itself. A clever wizard indeed, Gryffindor mused, admiring John's pragmatism. However, this method is quite taxing on your magical reserves. Expecting John to exhaust his magic, Gryffindor was taken aback when John retrieved a bottle of recovery potion from his bag and quickly replenished his magical energy. The bombing resumed with renewed vigor. Gryffindor's disbelief grew as John consumed potion after potion, his supply seemingly endless. How does a Muggleborn have access to more potions than even the oldest pureblood families? He wondered aloud. Finally, after another potion, a golden figure darted out from the devastated forest. John's enhanced eyesight locked onto the Snidget, and he gave chase with his flying boots. The Snidget proved to be an elusive target, weaving through the trees with incredible speed. Despite several hours of pursuit, John couldn't close the distance. As darkness fell, eerie cries filled the forest, and a creature with bird-like feathers and a dragon-like appearance emerged. Without hesitation, John attacked the creature with a precise spell, sending it flying. However, more of these bird-shaped ogres appeared, undeterred by his spells and continuing their pursuit. Recognizing the creatures for what they were, John intensified his efforts, blasting a path through them. Seizing the opportunity, he ascended higher, though the Snidget had become a mere speck in the distance. John's relentless pursuit through the forest, his innovative tactics, and his encounter with the mysterious creatures underscored his determination and resourcefulness. As night enveloped the forest, the quest for the golden Snidget took on a new level of urgency and danger. In the vast sky, John focused intently on the golden Snidget, casting spells in rapid succession. The Snidget's agility was unparalleled, making it a challenge to capture even with the finest broom, especially amidst the chaos caused by numerous avian predators. John's mind raced for a solution, and in a bold move, he unleashed the fire curse towards the forest below. Tree after tree was consumed by the spreading flames, causing the bird-like monsters to screech in agony as they were engulfed or suffocated by the smoke, plummeting to the ground. Amidst the chaos, the Snidget's flight became erratic, its speed hampered by the smoke and flames. Seizing the opportunity, John pushed his flying boots to their limit, closing in on the Snidget. As its wings faltered, John caught it just before it could fall into the fiery inferno below, successfully completing the trial. However, the victory came at a cost. The forest was ablaze, a sight that made Gryffindor's brow furrow in disapproval. With a sense of responsibility, John conjured a massive orb of water with the Aguamenti spell, directing it towards the flames. Witnessing this act, Gryffindor's expression softened. Although he resorts to drastic measures to succeed, he makes amends once his goal is achieved, Gryffindor thought, acknowledging John's effort to control the fire. Landing before Gryffindor, John opened his palms to reveal the golden Snidget, now attempting to regain its composure. "You have passed the test of the bird in the woods," Gryffindor announced, nodding in approval before dispelling the forest illusion. Ding! Challenge task triggered. Gryffindor Legacy Phase 1, Lion of the Mountain. Reward, points and the blessing of a heavy hit. Lions are known for their courage and strength, but a mountain lion must surpass its peers in might, Gryffindor explained. You must demonstrate your strength to me by climbing this mountain. With a wave of his wand, Gryffindor transformed the Room of Requirement into a towering mountain and proceeded to remove John's alchemical equipment, including his amulet and flying boots. Your skill in alchemy is commendable, but it will not aid you here, Gryffindor stated, emphasizing the need for a fair challenge. John, momentarily taken aback by the sudden change, gazed at the mountain. As he exhaled, his breath turned to mist in the cold air. Is it getting colder? He wondered aloud, noticing the snowflakes beginning to fall. Aware of the urgency, John started his ascent, the snow and wind intensifying with every step. Visibility dwindled until all he could see was a blanket of white. The journey was arduous, and at one point, John encountered a yeti, its white fur blending with the snow. The creature charged, but John skillfully dodged and countered with a spell, sending the yeti tumbling down the mountain in a massive snowball. Believing the ordeal was over, John was startled to find another yeti blocking his path. Refusing to be deterred, John cast a disillusionment charm on himself, hoping to bypass the creature unnoticed. However, he underestimated the yeti's keen sense of smell and was discovered. As the yeti prepared to attack, John met its gaze with a powerful look of deterrence, freezing it in place. Without hesitation, he drew the iron Wick sword, declaring, "I am a fire dragon." The blade burst into flames, and with a swift strike, John vanquished the yeti, clearing his path up the mountain. The white-haired snowman collapsed to the ground, its body igniting with flames from the wound inflicted upon it. "It seems that deterrence is effective," John remarked, his eyes narrowing with a dangerous glint. His demeanor shifted from polite to determined as a battalion of snowmen obstructed his path. Gripping his sword with both hands, he bellowed, "Come at me!" With the activation of his deterrence ability, the snowman facing him stiffened involuntarily. As John's sword, Iron Wick, danced through the air, the movements of the snowman visibly slowed, until eventually none remained standing in his vicinity. Clutching his sword firmly, John proceeded up the mountain with resolute steps. This spectacle did not escape Gryffindor's notice. Upon reaching the mountain's summit, where the wind and snow ceased their fury, John found Gryffindor awaiting him. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, signaling that only one final trial remained. John, now recognized as the hero of the sword, prepared to face whatever challenge lay ahead with Gryffindor. Chapter 58, The Sword Hero and the Legacy. Ding, challenge mission triggered. Gryffindor Legacy Stage 1, Hero of the Sword. Earn any reward point Blessing Seeker. As Gaushan vanished, they found themselves back on the original training ground. Gryffindor stood to the side, clapping his hands. "I must admit, I didn't expect you to make it this far," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "This is the final test, Master Mode." Master Mode? John glanced at Gryffindor, uncertain. With his current level of strength, it was unclear whether he could triumph in Master Mode. Yet, he felt a surge of confidence, believing he could breeze through the combination of difficult modes once more, especially with the alchemy equipment Gryffindor had returned to him and the amulet's assistance. Suddenly, Master Mode commenced. John half expected another dummy opponent, but instead, Gryffindor himself stepped into the center of the training ground. "Come on," Gryffindor beckoned. John was momentarily stunned. Gryffindor was the opponent for Master Mode? The thought was daunting, despite his significant improvement since his first year. Facing one of Hogwarts' 4 founders, especially Gryffindor, known for his dueling prowess, seemed insurmountable. Yet, having overcome 2 challenging hurdles, John couldn't back down now. With a heavy heart, he approached the training ground. Gryffindor stood ready, wielding only a wand that resembled a simple branch. "I admire your bravery," Gryffindor said with a chuckle. "Don't worry, I'm not at my full strength, and I'm not as formidable as you might imagine." John found Gryffindor's attempt at reassurance slightly exaggerated, but appreciated the gesture nonetheless. "Just a moment, please," he said, retrieving a small bag and extracting an enhancement potion. Under Gryffindor's watchful eye, John consumed the potion. Gryffindor observed with mild amusement. Drinking potions before a battle seemed overly cautious, but he wondered how much it would actually aid the young wizard. For the next half-minute, Gryffindor watched as John consumed an array of potions: Felicity Elixir, Fire Resistance, Enhancement, Restoration, anything that could bolster his strength. "I'm ready," John declared, now radiating power, sword in his right hand and wand in his left. Gryffindor, seeing his reflection in the young wizard's determination, smiled and raised his wand to his chest. "I hope your teacher taught you how to duel," he said, emphasizing the importance of saluting one's opponent before a duel. John reciprocated the gesture, placing his wand on his chest. After exchanging salutes, they turned and took steps away from each other. At the count of 10, John spun around, only to be met with a red light speeding towards him. The amulet activated instantly, and the iron armor curse shielded him from the attack. John felt a chill run down his spine at the speed of the assault. "Interesting little artifact," Gryffindor commented, launching another spell. He demonstrated the skill of a true dueling master, and even at a fraction of his full strength, his vast experience posed a significant challenge for John. The amulet activated once more, prompting John to realize he couldn't remain on the defensive. He began to counterattack, his wand and sword moving in harmony. "I am a fire dragon," he declared, his sword igniting as he cleaved through the incoming red light, deflecting the next spell with his wand. The battle intensified, with white and red lights weaving a dazzling display. Gryffindor, intrigued, intensified his assault, but John adeptly parried the spell, causing an explosion on the training ground. Debris transformed into a makeshift weapon, striking John from behind. Despite the surprise attack, John's resolve only hardened, ready to prove his worth in this ultimate test of skill and courage. Caught off guard, John activated his amulet but was still launched into the air. Gryffindor seized the moment, casting Opugno, transforming the objects on the training ground into a swarm of birds that rushed towards John. In response, John spun around, unleashing a flame spell to intercept them, yet some of the birds managed to breach his defenses, striking him and causing pain in his shoulder. Despite the discomfort, John gritted his teeth and persevered, casting the shattering curse with his left hand towards Gryffindor, who easily deflected it. Gryffindor, with a swift motion, transfigured 2 stools into lions that charged at John. John rolled away, narrowly avoiding their attacks while wielding his greatsword. Throughout this exchange, Gryffindor remained stationary, offering advice. "Pay attention to the coordination of your movements, your spellcasting, and the timing of your attacks," he instructed. Taking the advice to heart, John cast the iron armor curse to bolster his defenses, allowing him to recalibrate his attack strategy. Breathing heavily, John faced a new challenge as Gryffindor's wand emitted a lightning-like whip. John parried and dodged, but Gryffindor's relentless assault continued, culminating in a spell that struck John's wrist, sending the sword of iron Wick flying from his grasp. In a desperate bid, John directed his wand at the sword, causing it to veer away just as Gryffindor attempted to catch it, forcing Gryffindor to retreat. Seizing the moment, John intensified his attack, like utilizing his proficiency in level 3 transfiguration to transform his wand into a puppy that latched onto Gryffindor's calf. Gryffindor managed to dislodge the puppy, but John was already launching another spell. "Fuchsia," he exclaimed, casting a spell that sent Gryffindor flying backwards, as if invisible hands had lifted him by his feet. Despite being the dueling champion, Gryffindor quickly retaliated, casting a spell that immobilized John's legs. In a decisive move, John launched a dual spell, Expelliarmus and Petrificus Totalis. The spells collided mid-air, creating a spectacle reminiscent of clashing lightning. In this critical moment, John's eyes transformed, adopting vertical pupils, as he summoned the Sword of Iron Wick with a surge of magical power. Gryffindor, momentarily immobilized, attempted to deflect the incoming sword with his wand, but both he and the sword were repelled. With Gryffindor incapacitated, John cast another spell, knocking Gryffindor's wand from his grasp. The lions, now mere inches from John, reverted back into chairs and collapsed to the ground. "Okay, you win," Gryffindor conceded, acknowledging his defeat despite being at a fraction of his full strength and relying solely on his wand. "That fuchsia charm is intriguing," Gryffindor remarked, admitting he had never seen it before, as it was a creation of Snape's. Once the petrification spell was lifted, Gryffindor stood, appearing unharmed, while John, the victor, was visibly exhausted. Reflecting on his ability to manipulate the Sword of Iron Wick without a wand, John was puzzled. "Interesting, I didn't expect you to be capable of casting spells without a wand at your age. I underestimated you," Gryffindor praised, leaving John bewildered by his own feat. Scratching his head in confusion, John eagerly asked, "Did I pass?" Gryffindor's affirmative nod filled John with excitement, marking the beginning of his legacy. The mere thought of the Big Four was exhilarating. Gryffindor, with a hint of pride in his voice, announced, "You will receive an extremely powerful sword, the very weapon I wielded." John, after a moment of hesitation and observing Gryffindor's confident demeanor, cautiously inquired, "You're not referring to the sword of Gryffindor, are you?" "Indeed I am," Gryffindor responded with enthusiasm. The sword was his prized possession, crafted specifically for him by the Goblin King, a testament to its formidable power. John felt a wave of disappointment. After all this time, the revelation that the promised weapon was the sword of Gryffindor, which currently resided with Dumbledore, was disheartening. Unlike Harry, John couldn't simply take the sword. Such an act would be tantamount to rebellion. It dawned on him that Gryffindor's promise was more of a predicament than a gift. With a sense of resignation, John mentioned, "I've seen the sword before. It's in the possession of Headmaster Dumbledore." Gryffindor, momentarily taken aback, then remembered that he had indeed entrusted the sword to Hogwarts for safekeeping. Noticing John's look of frustration, Gryffindor felt a twinge of embarrassment. In an attempt to make amends, Gryffindor suggested, "How about I teach you to forge a sword yourself?" Despite his seemingly carefree nature, Gryffindor was renowned for his exceptional spellcasting and crafting abilities. As a form of compensation for the unattainable sword of Gryffindor, Gryffindor waved his wand, transforming the surroundings once more. This time, they were not transported to a forest or a mountain, but to a cozy room. This room, known as the Chamber of Secrets, was where Gryffindor had lived. It housed all the knowledge he had left behind, representing his most valuable legacy. Within this chamber, John was about to embark on a journey of discovery, learning not just the art of sword forging, but also gaining insight into the depth of Gryffindor's wisdom and skills. This unexpected turn of events offered a glimmer of hope, suggesting that sometimes the greatest treasures are not the ones we initially seek, but the knowledge and skills we acquire along the way. Chapter 59, Neville's Transformation and the Encounter with the Eccentric Girl. "I hope you can cherish this place and strive to become an exceptional and compassionate wizard," Gryffindor's essence conveyed, even as his form began to disintegrate into sawdust. John, witnessing this, inquired with a hint of sorrow, "Are you leaving?" "My son, I have long passed, and what you see before you is merely a fragment of my soul," Gryffindor explained, his visage marked by a red beard emerging amidst the falling sawdust. He gazed at John with warmth and added, "In you, I see a bright future for the wizarding world. Your talents are immense." "Thank you, Founder Gryffindor," John expressed his gratitude genuinely. Despite their brief acquaintance, Gryffindor's strength and magnanimity had left a profound impression on him. As Gryffindor's form neared complete dissipation, he suddenly cursed, "That blasted sorting hat! It must have been malfunctioning to place you in Slytherin." Had Gryffindor been alive, he might have considered dunking the sorting hat in water to cleanse it of any possible dust clogging its judgment. John, feeling a bit sheepish, didn't dwell much on the sorting hat's decision. After all, he was already a Slytherin and had accepted his fate. Once Gryffindor vanished, the training ground transformed into a cozy room. John discovered a tome detailing Gryffindor's spellcasting techniques, akin to a treasure trove of knowledge. Among the finds was a manual on Gryffindor's magic swordsmanship, revealing the depth of skill required to master it. John, realizing the fortune of his victory, pocketed the book, eager to learn from it. In the Great Hall, John hastily consumed his breakfast, still weary from the previous night's trials. On his way back then, he had narrowly escaped detection by his housemaster, thanks to a well-timed illusion spell. Observing Neville's bruised face, John offered, "Neville, you should stand up for yourself." Neville's swollen cheeks were a clear testament to Malfoy's handiwork. "Thank you, John. I wish I could, but I'm not strong enough," Neville admitted. John, seeing an opportunity, asked, "Do you want to become stronger? So strong that no one can bully you again?" His earnestness convinced Neville to consider the proposition seriously. "After class, meet me by the Humping Willow," John instructed, leaving Neville with a parting thought. "You are far from mediocre, Neville. You simply haven't discovered your strength yet." Throughout the day, Neville was preoccupied with John's words, his concentration wavering even during Professor Flitwick's class. After the day's lessons, John, having effortlessly mastered a transfiguration assignment, contemplated his next steps. Gryffindor's legacy had granted him additional skill points, but he decided to reserve them for the time being. On his way to the Humping Willow, John encountered Daphne. "Heading to Quidditch practice?" she inquired, her tone laced with curiosity. Daphne hinted at a significant development. Draco's father had donated a new batch of broomsticks to the Slytherin team, a fact that intrigued John, but also reminded him of the task at hand. The Quidditch team had caught John's attention, especially after being praised for his flying skills in his first year. "You flew very well in the first grade. Maybe you should try out," someone suggested. However, John expressed his lack of interest due to time constraints. He couldn't help but shake his head in disbelief upon hearing that Malfoy might resort to using his wealth to secure a position on the team. It seemed unnecessary to John. Even without financial influence, Malfoy's flying skills were more than adequate for him to earn the seeker position on merit alone. This situation underscored the pervasive influence of money, possibly allowing Malfoy to quickly secure a key role on the team. When Daphne realized John wasn't interested in Quidditch, she shifted the conversation to the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. She had hoped for a competent instructor, but was quickly disillusioned after attending Lockhart's class. "I told my mum, and she didn't believe it. It was too bad," Daphne lamented, with John nodding in agreement. Daphne whimsically suggested that John could serve as a substitute teacher, a notion he found amusing yet unrealistic. After their conversation, John made his way to the Humping Willow, where he encountered not Neville, whom he was expecting, but a young girl instead. She was curiously searching for something near the dangerous tree. John warned her about the Humping Willow's violent tendencies, and she turned to him with a dreamy voice, introducing herself as Luna Lovegood while searching for a horned, snoring beast. John was taken aback by her eccentric appearance, marked by Ravenclaw robes, a necklace of butterbeer corks, and unusual earrings. Despite her oddities, John found her company pleasant. John and Luna's conversation was interrupted when he noticed a secret path beneath the Humping Willow, a discovery that piqued Luna's curiosity. John, aware of its destination to the Shrieking Shack thanks to the Marauder's map, casually suggested it might lead to a haunted house. His exploration was cut short by Neville's arrival, out of breath and slightly embarrassed to see Luna there. John introduced Luna to Neville, who greeted her shyly. With the introductions out of the way, John turned his attention back to the secret passage, but instead, he decided to focus on the task at hand. Smiling kindly at Neville, he said, "Then let's start the first training." The word training caught Neville off guard, but John reassured him, "Yes, it's to make you stronger." This marked the beginning of an unexpected but promising adventure for the trio. John took the lead, with Neville close behind, and Luna trailing behind them, drawn by her innate curiosity. As they approached the Humping Willow, Neville cast a wary glance towards the dark entrance hidden at its base. Sensing his apprehension, John clapped a reassuring hand on his shoulder and said with a relaxed smile, "Don't worry, there won't be any ghosts. Well, unless Peeves has decided to make this his new home." The mere mention of Peeves caused Neville's unease to intensify. Despite his reluctance, Neville found himself being gently nudged to take the lead into the tunnel, with John following closely behind. Luna, ever fascinated by the unknown, eagerly entered after them. The passage was shrouded in darkness, amplifying Neville's fear. It was clear he had forgotten to cast the Lumos charm in his nervous state. John, noticing this, reminded him gently. After a few tense attempts, Neville successfully cast the spell, and the wand's light pierced the darkness. The illuminated path seemed to bolster his courage, and the trio proceeded with a bit more confidence. Chapter 60. The Boggart and the Stargazers. The passage was narrow and cramped, forcing the trio to walk in single file. Neville, leading the way, couldn't help but voice his growing apprehension. "Where does this lead?" John, trailing behind, replied nonchalantly, "A haunted house." "What?" Neville stopped dead in his tracks upon hearing it was a haunted house. John gave him a reassuring pat on the back. "Don't worry, I'm here." Neville wanted to protest that John's presence did little to alleviate his fears, but before he could, Luna chimed in with a sing-song voice. "There are ghosts in Hogwarts. aren't there? Among the three, only Neville seemed genuinely frightened, which only served to amplify his self-loathing for his own timidity. Gathering his courage, he pressed on, eventually emerging into a house that seemed to embody the essence of neglect and decay. The wallpaper was peeling, the furniture smashed and broken, and the windows were boarded up, casting the room into shadows. It was the quintessential haunted house, right down to the wallpaper that looked as though it had been clawed at by some unseen terror. John noticed Luna gravitating closer to him. He had forgotten that, unlike him, she didn't have the advantage of seeing in the dark. "Lumos," he whispered, and the comforting glow of his wand lit up the room. The house, steeped in darkness, seemed to whisper secrets of its past. Wanting to challenge Neville's fears, John suggested, "Let's split up and explore." Neville, despite the lump in his throat, nodded and ventured forth, his resolve hardening with each step. John watched him go, then turned his attention to the remnants of luxury buried beneath layers of dust and decay. Pushing open a creaking wooden door, John and Luna discovered what appeared to be a kitchen, its view obscured by the boarded-up windows that hinted at the presence of trees outside. "We should check on Neville. He's probably terrified by now," Luna observed, her insight cutting through the silence. John agreed, though he felt a twinge of guilt at the thought of Neville's fear. They hadn't gone far when Neville's panicked voice reached them. "Professor Snape, I didn't mean to." "No need to explain, Neville Longbottom. Because of you, Gryffindor has been deducted 100 points. The voice, cold and unforgiving, belonged to Professor Snape. Neville, imagining the scorn he would face from his housemates, cowered in fear as the figure advanced. John, sensing something amiss, burst through the door. "Stupefy." The spell struck the figure, revealing it not to be Snape but a boggart, a creature that morphed into one's greatest fear. Neville was aghast, believing John had attacked a professor. But as they watched, the boggart transformed again, this time into a plate of stargazing pie with 4 dead fish heads protruding from it, before vanishing completely. John, recognizing the creature, explained, "It's a boggart. They become whatever we're most afraid of." The revelation brought a mix of relief and curiosity. The encounter with the boggart, though frightening, had taught them an important lesson about facing their fears. And as they left the haunted house behind, the trio couldn't help but feel a little braver than before. John understood Neville's fear of Professor Snape, but he was puzzled by his own fear of the stargazers. After a moment of contemplation, he realized that his constant practice of occlumency might have influenced the boggart to transform into the dark dish he detested. He was momentarily speechless, casting a glance at the cabinet where boggarts preferred to lurk in dark, cramped spaces. With a decisive kick, John sent the stargazing pie back into the cabinet and secured it with a flick of his wand. "Neville, it's all right. That was just a boggart. But why did you think of Professor Snape just now?" "It's quite surprising that you'd conjure him up in this situation," John said, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. Neville, looking somewhat embarrassed, hesitated before replying. "I remembered being docked points last year, and I feared Professor Snape might be lurking in the room, ready to deduct more points." John sympathized with Neville's predicament. Being penalized for trying to help Harry had left a deep psychological scar on him, especially since it was actually Professor McGonagall, not Snape, who had deducted the points. John wondered why Neville's mind immediately went to Snape. Turning to Luna, John noticed her fascination with the boggart, innocently believing it could transform into something as benign as a fish pie. Deciding it was time to conclude their adventure, especially with nightfall approaching and the presence of a first-year student among them, John led the way back to the castle. Along the way, Neville narrowly escaped an encounter with the humping willow, saved by John's quick reflexes. After safely returning to the castle and parting ways, Luna thanked John for the adventure, her voice light and dreamy. John hinted at the many wonders Hogwarts had to offer before heading to the room of requirement for training. While training, John's thoughts drifted to Neville. He considered the idea of finding a more suitable weapon for Neville, envisioning him as a sword master capable of destroying Horcruxes. With his skills in alchemy and Gryffindor's casting techniques, John crafted a rudimentary sword as a training tool for Neville. The next morning, John presented the sword to Neville, suggesting he might indeed be a swordmaster. Neville was taken aback, unsure of how to respond, but John encouraged him to embrace sword training and aspire to greatness. Meanwhile, Hermione's unwavering dedication to reading Lockhart's book, despite a disappointing lesson, impressed John. He hoped she would soon see through Lockhart's facade. Heading to class, John pondered over Professor Snape's persistent coldness towards him, despite his contributions to earning points for their house. On his way, he encountered Malfoy, who smugly hinted at an upcoming humiliation for the Gryffindor Quidditch team, boasting about the superior Nimbus 2001 brooms his father had sponsored for the Slytherin team. Malfoy's disdain for the Gryffindor team's equipment only fueled John's determination to prove him wrong. John could almost visualize the day he would lead Slytherin to victory, securing the house trophy. This vision filled him with a sense of pride and determination. However, a part of him felt a twinge of embarrassment at the thought of discussing this dream with Harry. After all, with Harry Potter in the picture, achieving such a feat might prove to be more challenging than he anticipated. Harry was, undeniably, the protagonist of their story, a fact that could not be overlooked.